These terrifying cryptid encounters that left people missing will absolutely shock you. Albert Osman, the man who claimed Bigfoot kidnapped him. Imagine waking up in the middle of the night, still inside your sleeping bag, being carried through the pitch black wilderness by something so strong you can't fight back. No growl, no roar, just the sound of heavy footsteps and your own heartbeat exploding in your ears. That's exactly what Albert Osman said happened to him back in 1924. Osman was a Swedish prospector camping alone near Toba Inlet in British Columbia, a remote mountainous region so rugged that even experienced outdoorsmen can disappear without a trace. He had heard local stories about giant, hairy men in the area, but brushed them off, as wilderness folklore, until the night he vanished, of course. Now, Osman said he woke up suddenly when something grabbed his sleeping bag, with him still inside, mind you, and hoisted him onto its shoulder. He couldn't see, he couldn't move, he could only feel himself being carried for what he estimated was several hours through rough terrain. When he was finally dropped and managed to kind of wriggle himself out, he claimed he was staring at a family of Sasquatch, 2 massive adults and 2 younger ones. He described them in shocking detail, towering human-like figures covered in dark hair with expressive faces and incredibly powerful builds. Instead of hurting him, Osman said they kept him there, preventing him from leaving. He believed he was being observed, studied, possibly even considered as food. For 6 days, he said they fed him roots and strange vegetation. He described the smell, their sounds, the way they moved, and the strange intelligence in their eyes. He tried repeatedly to escape, but said the adult male always stopped him. Now, finally, Osman made a desperate move. He carried a tin of snuff tobacco. Knowing the creatures were curious, he offered some to the large male. The Sasquatch swallowed it and soon became violently ill. While the creature was incapacitated, Osman ran for his life. He didn't just wander back into town confused, he returned with a detailed, consistent story that he stuck to for the rest of his life. Now, here's where it gets eerie though. Osman was gone long enough that he could have had easily passed away out there. That region is actually filled with very steep cliffs, dense forest, and wildlife. Many people have gone missing in similar wilderness areas and just never come back. But Osman did come back, with a story also that sounded impossible yet disturbingly specific. Was he lying, hallucinating, or did he survive something others never returned from? Dennis Martin, the missing child and the creature on the ridge. A 6-year-old boy hides behind a bush during a family game and is never seen again. That is not an urban legend. That's the real disappearance of Dennis Martin, one of the most haunting missing person cases in U.S. National Park history. So it was June 14th, 1969 in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Dennis was on a Father's Day camping trip. While playing hide and seek with other kids, he ducked behind some bush to jump out and surprise his family. Now, it's alleged that the kids he was with actually told him to go to a separate way, like go a completely different area than them to go hide, because he was wearing such a bright red shirt, and then of course he would be easily seen, so he did. He went his own way. Seconds later though, he was gone. No scream, no struggle, and no trail. The area was full of people that day, but to be fair, around 6 p.m., heavy rainfall came down, and so that would have actually wiped away any footsteps or any trail. Now, searchers mobilized almost immediately, and the FBI got involved as well. Hundreds of volunteers kind of combed the mountains, but nothing. We're talking, I think it was a total of 1,400 people that actually came out to help look. But then came a very separate, chilling report. A family hiking several miles away reported seeing a very large, rough-looking man, or what the child actually thought it was a bear, carrying something over his shoulder. They said he moved strangely, almost gliding, and was heading uphill into the dense forest. They assumed it was a bear or a park ranger carrying equipment, until they learned a child had vanished at the exact same time. Dogs brought in to track Dennis reportedly lost his scent abruptly, as if he had simply just stopped existing at a certain point. The Smoky Mountains have long been associated with Bigfoot sightings, especially in remote ridges and deep valleys. While authorities never concluded cryptid involvement, the timing, the strange witness reports, and the complete lack of evidence turned this case into one of the most discussed disappearances in cryptid circles. Most lost hikers leave clues, scraps, footprints, something, right? Dennis left nothing. If he was still alive today, he'd actually be 62. I don't know, this one is wild. It's a cold case I would like to try and solve, seriously. The Bennington Triangle, where people walk in and don't walk out. There's a stretch of wilderness in Vermont locals call the Bennington Bennington Triangle. And if you step inside its boundaries, history suggests you might not come back, kind of like the Bermuda Triangle. Between the 1940s and 1950s, multiple people vanished there under terrifyingly strange circumstances. Now, one of them was named Paula Weldon, an 18-year-old college student who went for just a simple afternoon hike, on the Long Trail in 1946. She was actually seen by several hikers, then, she disappeared around a bend in the trail. No body, no belongings, no explanation. Then there was James Tedford, a war veteran who vanished from a moving bus in 1949. His luggage was still on the rack. His seat was empty. Witnesses said he had been there minutes earlier. Another case involved 8-year-old Paul Jepson, who disappeared from a farm while his mother fed pigs just a short distance away. Bloodhounds tracked his scent to a road where it kind of stopped cold. I think there was like 5 in total of disappearances over this time. Locals had stories long before these disappearances, though. They spoke of a creature they called the Bennington Monster, described as a tall, hairy, human-like being seen moving through the woods. So it sounds like Bigfoot to me, right? Native legends from the area warned that the mountains were cursed hunting grounds where strange beings lived. The pattern is what disturbs people the most, though, right? Victims vanish near the same area, often in daylight, and often close to paths or roads, and search efforts repeatedly fail to produce remains. Are these just tragic wilderness disappearances, or is there something in those forests that people occasionally cross paths with and don't survive? The Nahanni Valley, Canada's Valley of Headless Men. Yes, if there were ever a place that feels like it belongs to cryptids, it's Nahanni Valley in Canada's Northwest Territories. Towering cliffs, endless forests, mist-covered rivers, and a history of people going in and, just never coming out. For over a century, prospectors and explorers have vanished there. Some were later found deceased under very bizarre circumstances. Others were never located at all, and the valley earned the nickname the Valley of Headless Men after multiple gold seekers were found decapitated in the early 1900s. Their camps were intact, their supplies untouched, but their heads were just missing. Local Dean legends spoke of a race of giant wild men called Naha who once inhabited the mountains. Fierce, reclusive beings said to live in caves high along the cliffs. Again, sounds like Bigfoot to me, right? Now, the stories describe them as large, powerful, and not fully human, whatever that means. Now, modern visitors report strange screams echoing across the valley, massive footprints, and the feeling of just being watched. Even experienced survivalists say Nahanni feels different, like oppressive, silent, and just flat out wrong. Search teams have struggled in the terrain for decades. The wilderness there is so vast and hostile that it could probably hide anything, including something that probably doesn't want to be found. Dyatlov Pass, the night something was outside the tent. 9 experienced hikers, a remote mountain in Russia, and a night so terrifying that whatever happened still defies explanation. Now, in 1959, the Dyatlov Pass hikers set up camp on a snowy slope in the Ural Mountains. Now, sometime during the night, something caused them to cut their way out of their tent from the inside, panicked escape basically into sub-zero darkness. They fled without proper clothing, some passed away from hypothermia, and others had horrific internal injuries like crushed ribs, fractured skulls, but with no signs of external trauma. So how does that happen? One woman's tongue was actually missing from her mouth. Very weird. Investigators were baffled. There were reports in the region of sightings, of the Mansi Menk, which is a large ape-like cryptid from local folklore. Now, other hikers in the broader area reported seeing strange orange lights in the sky around the time. So just a lot going on, No avalanche evidence fully explained the scene. No animal tracks matched. The group had military experience and wilderness knowledge. They wouldn't flee their tent half-dressed unless something truly terrifying was happening right outside, right? Whatever they saw, they believed staying in that tent meant certain doom, so they left. And whatever caused their injuries did so with massive force. To this day, cryptid theories remain one of, the explanations people return to, because the behavior of the hikers suggests they weren't just reacting to weather, but to a presence. These cases are real disappearances and historical accounts, but each is wrapped in cryptid lore, witness reports, and mysteries that official explanations have never fully erased. And maybe that's the most unsettling part here, because wilderness doesn't just hide bodies, it hides things we still don't fully understand.
So how about we start off today with something that's guaranteed to make me go, ugh, a large insectoid something spotted in Oregon. So back in the early 2000s, a man by the name of Adam Brittle was out for a bike ride at around 4:45 in the morning near the Willamette River in Eugene, Oregon. The spot he chose chose to stop and rest at was next to the famous Owen Rose Garden Park, and Interstate 5 ran overhead. So he was underneath, next to the river. He put his back against one of the support beams from the highway and was just chilling. But that's when he noticed some strange things going on across the river from where he was, which he estimates was maybe 50 feet on the bank. He saw two tall, thin but very muscular, mantis insect beings on the other bank. Yucky. The first one was less than 10 feet from the water's edge, not moving at all, but its eyes were open and glassy like mirrors. And there was a person there, on the ground, face down and looking like maybe he fell. And that's when Adam noticed the second hellion. Now you might be asking yourself, how or why didn't Adam notice the second creature before that point? It's because this thing wasn't super clear to his eyes, since it was jerking backwards and forwards so quickly over another body that seemed to move like a blur, which that's very fast. So at this point, obviously Adam was a little terrified. Like, yes, that should be obvious, but I wanted to make sure I was crystal clear. He slid forward from his pole, attempting to quietly move away, but looked back up against his will, and that's when he heard strange talking and what sounded like the banging of metal on concrete. He was met with the view of what looked like a white, bald man with big black sunglasses peering out from behind the pillar barely 15 feet away from him. Adam made eye contact with whatever it was and scrambled to get out of there as quickly as he could. He stumbled a couple of times, never looking back, as he hopped on his bike and began pedaling like his life depended on it. And hey, as far as we know, maybe it did. Right after he started riding, his stomach decided to start emptying itself from the stress of the entire situation, and that's when something flashed by Adam, and it was so quick that it seemed like it was running at hyperspeed. He decided to go to the hospital to be safe, and outside the window of the emerge waiting area, he observed a black car doing laps around the building for a solid hour, as if it was waiting for something or somebody. And the windows were fogged, so all he could make out were the outline of 3 bodies, which only added to his fear until they left. And he's just sitting there like, I need help, but at the same time, I'm feeling scared. A couple of days after the whole debacle, Adam was feeling brave and went back to the scene of the unknown to try and figure things out. He noticed a lack of any kind of track marks or footsteps where the unknown creatures had been, but it almost looked like the area had been dug up and resettled, which creepy. Now apparently he hasn't seen the creatures ever since, but like, who knows? Time to venture over to Motory Bay for the tale of Bobo. Will you indulge me and allow me to tell this like the incredible story it is? Thank you kindly. It was a clear fall day, and the Pacific Ocean was as flat and clear as a giant mirror. From Captain Sal Coletto's small salmon fishing boat, 10 miles off Moss Landing, the indentation of Motory Bay on the shore looked like a giant thumbprint as he headed back towards Point Pinos. After a day of luckless fishing in the waters of Santa Cruz, the Monterey fisherman was looking forward to getting home. Suddenly, Coletto noticed something floating in the sea about a half-mile farther out. Thinking it might be a man bobbing in the ocean, he revved the engine and headed out towards the object. When the captain got within 100 feet of the thing, he saw a creature with a head the size of a 50-gallon barrel. It was tapered to where a duck-like bill protruded from the massive bulging forehead. Coletto started to think about how a pair of fishermen had disappeared recently without a trace. Maybe this sea monster had devoured them. Not wanting to join their ranks, he pushed his boat's throttle all the way down and headed back towards the Monterey Peninsula. He decided that he wasn't going to tell anybody about what he'd seen. He was like, no, I don't feel like being labeled crazy. Zip. 16 years later though, Coletto was traveling towards the fishing grounds off of Half Moon Bay on his 45-foot boat, the Dante Alighieri, and while the crew ate lunch in the galley below, Coletto and his brother-in-law swapped fishing stories as the craft headed northwards. Eventually, his brother-in-law started talking about a strange sea creature that he'd spotted a few times at the edge of the deep Monterey submarine canyon. Coletto got the chills as his brother-in-law described how other fishermen had said the beast would only surface on calm, sunny days, about 24 hours before a strong northwest wind would start to blow. And this was a windless day, and the water was smooth and silver as liquid mercury. As Coletto gazed towards the Santa Cruz Mountains, he observed something bobbing in the sea, and his heart fluttered like a dying fish's gills. He realized immediately that it was that strange creature once again. He yelled out to the crew, all hands on deck. They poured out of the galley and stood on the bow of the boat, wondering what the commotion was all about. I want all of you guys to see this, he said, as he slowly brought the boat closer to the beast. The captain then cut the motor, and the boat drifted within 50 feet of the object. The creature's eyes were closed, and it floated on the surface as if it was sunbathing or sleeping. It has the face of a monkey, his cook squealed. Let's leave. This is a bad omen. His brother-in-law was like, oh no, that looks like the face of an old man. Now the noise must have awakened the monster, and it slowly opened its eyes, which were as big and pink as grapefruits. The creature's body was brown and almost as long as a boat. Its skin was wrinkled and sagged from its frame like ill-fitting clothing. Coletto thought to himself that this was a very old animal, and while the crew argued about what it looked like, the monster quietly slid underwater. Following the sighting, several other fishermen saw the creature, and eventually the people of the area started to refer to the animal as Bobo, the old man of the sea. So from then on, Coletto kept a camera on his vessel, hoping to once again spot Bobo and get photographic evidence of its existence. Sadly, he never saw it again. But a few years later, in 1925, a strange sea creature washed ashore on a beach about 2 miles north of Santa Cruz. Though the body was decomposed, scientists, including the notable E.L. Wallace, a former president of the Natural History Society of British Columbia, didn't think that this was the carcass of a whale or a shark. He's like, this might be a plesiosaurus, a large marine reptile held over from the Jurassic period, but he couldn't tell you for sure. And here's the thing, reportings of this creature continue to this day. To this day. Yeah, that's creepy enough. No thank you. Oh, we're not done with unknown sea cryptids yet, folks. We're just moving 26 miles over to Capitola. A captain who prefers to stay anonymous was driving a team towards the area when suddenly his attention was captured by some young sea lions not far out. They were lined up and several large lions were swimming back and forth in front of them. Much farther out, he saw the water being churned to foam and then thrown high up in the air. It was shiny, and at first he was like, okay, it's just a big fish, whatever. A dozen or more so lions were battling it, and every once in a while, all would rise out of the water. So it was looking to him as though all the sea lions were attacking it beneath, and then the monster came out of the water several times. Afterwards, when he was telling the story, he's like, I think it's about 30 feet long. So a few days later, the body of a strange creature was discovered by Charles Moore on the shore in that very same area that our witness saw the battle. The body was examined by none other than E.L. Wallace. You know that expert I just talked about? Pretty great. And he's like, my examination of the monster was quite thorough. I felt at its mouth and found it had no teeth. Its head is large and its neck fully 20 feet long. The body is weak and the tail is only 3 feet in length from the end of the backbone. These facts do away with the whale theory, as the backbone of a whale is far larger than any bone in this animal. And once again, its tail is too weak for an animal of the deep and does away with that last version. And with a build like this, it must have lived on herbage. So later he offered the theory that the monster might have been preserved in a glacier for millions of years, finally being released by the gradual melting of ice and eventually ending up in the area. But to this day, nobody knows exactly what that thing was. Just that there tends to be a lot of aquatic cryptid activity all in the same area. Time to move out of this bay and venture over to the Bridgewater Triangle. It is one of the most haunted areas in Massachusetts, heck, just a notable spooky spot in the overall United States. Matt Danchuk and his buddies decided one night, around 3 a.m. in the morning, that it would be a fun idea to go exploring the Profile Rock area, just for laughs. Look, I know we can all see where this is going, but I'm gonna tell the story anyways. If you can't see, well, 3 a.m. is not a good time to go exploring, folks. So guys were on their way out, they were walking down a long winding path to get back to their vehicle, they'd done their exploring, but that's when stuff began to happen. So let's set the scene for everybody. It's pitch black out, the only thing the guys could see was the moon shining through the trees, and Matt felt the need to turn around while they were walking. Not sure why, but something caught his eye. He spotted some sort of creature, limply running towards the group. It was about 100 feet away, favoring one leg over the other. Now initially he thought it was somebody who got injured in the woods or something, until he saw this thing run past the moonlight. So you know how when somebody draws a person as like a stick figure, like that? Apparently that's exactly how this thing looked. It had no facial features, no face, just a completely blank-like stick figure. Its body looked the same from what Matt could see, no definition or anything. Now Matt nudged his buddy to turn around as well. When he saw the look of horror go across his friend's face, they made eye contact and just ran until they reached their vehicle. They never saw the creature again, and thankfully haven't attempted a stupidly risky 3 a.m. jaunt again either. Like, common sense. Apparently it ain't so common. Alrighty everybody, how about I end today with a classic? Good old Bigfoot. A truck driver in Greene County near Wind Ridge, near a gas well site, saw a large, coarsely haired, covered figure in the headlights of his truck. After initially thinking it was a stump, it stood there and looked at him as he was passing, and then jumped into the thick brush behind itself away from the road. He thinks it was about 7 to 8 feet tall, very thickly built in the arms and legs with very large hands, and had a flat face, wide mouth, and a wide and flat nose. He observed the large foot and toe pads as it turned and jumped into the brush. He contacted dispatch to inform them, and the next day the company's safety team reviewed the video and determined that wasn't a bear, and he verified that other coworkers had also seen a similar subject about 4 miles away at another well site. And it was so scary that some folks actually quit their jobs over it. And because he likes his evidence, he also confirmed with a local property owner that he had also heard and recorded similar subjects in the area. Maybe it's time I invest in a dash cam for my own vehicle. The Michigan Dogman has been terrifying locals since at least 1887, when not one, but 2 lumberjacks shared their sighting of the creature. According to legend, this cryptid has a dog's head on a man's body, but it isn't a werewolf. It's the Dog Man, who for most witnesses steps out of the trees in an isolated part of the woods, performs some acrobatic moves, and then tears off into the woods. It was described as a 7-foot-tall, blue-eyed, or amber-eyed, bipedal, canine-like animal with, yes, the torso of a man, but fearsome howls. But apparently they sound human. This creature was unknown to most of the modern world until very late in the 20th century. It is said to have been stalking the area around the Manistee River since the days when the Odawa tribes lived there. In 1937, in Paris, Michigan, not to be confused with Paris, Texas, or Paris, Canada, Robert Fortney was attacked by 5 wild dogs and said that one of the 5 walked on 2 legs. Flash forward to 2017, truck driver Joe Barger pulled over in the Dogman's territory in Manistee National Forest to fix a leaky tire. Well, I guess probably just a busted tire. According to Barger, he was under his vehicle fixing things up when he heard an unnatural animal call emanating from the woods. Assuming it came from a black bear, he fixed his thing, got in the vehicle, drove off, only to spot a giant wolf head in the open window of his very tall truck, keeping pace with the vehicle. Barger claimed the creature had huge white teeth with 3-inch long canines, long black ears, and huge, seemingly intelligent yellow eyes. After deciding the dogman was kinda set on making him his next meal, Barger snagged his Colt and fired at the creature, blasting it into the weeds. Supposedly, the dogman's body was gone when Barger turned around to check it out, and 2 people claimed they witnessed a bear fight where the body would have been. Going back a little bit of time, back in 1987, the legend of the Michigan Dogman gained popularity when a DJ at WTCM-FM recorded a song about the creature and its reported sightings. And he based the songs on actual reports. So this song was recorded with a keyboard backing and it was credited to Bob Farley. After the song was played on air, Cook received calls from listeners who said they'd had a lot of encounters. In the weeks after the song was first played, it was the most requested song on the station. Cook also sold cassettes of the songs for $4 and donated proceeds from the single to an animal shelter. Oh, before I forget, have you noticed anything in common with all these years? So according to legends, the Dogman appears in a 10-year cycle that falls on years ending in 7. And at the end of the day, sightings have been reported in several locations throughout Michigan, but primarily in the northwestern quadrant of the Lower Peninsula. So if you see a dogman, a lot of believers think that if you simply clap, you're gonna scare it away. So try that. Good luck. As the legend goes, locals of the village of Wynn in central Michigan claim a corn monster lurks in the cornfields. To be specific, a shadowy figure that looks like a large, disheveled man emerges from the stalks and scares anyone driving in the rural area late at night. It's located near the intersection of South Wind Road and West Blanchard Road in Fremont Township, Isabella County, which is about 12 miles southeast of Mount Pleasant. There was allegedly an encounter in 2003 from a delivery man who stopped on a country road near Wynn one night to just rest. The driver admitted that he occasionally felt before that night that there was something trying to reach out of the corner of his truck whenever he would drive down that road, but that night, things got different. He got out of his truck, wanted to just stretch his legs, and the next thing he knew, a frightening human-like creature appeared on the edge of the cornfield. He described this creature as unexplainable, dark, dirty, man-like, and our guy screamed, scrambled back into the vehicle, and drove off, passing by the thing as it stared at him until he was out of sight. As a matter of fact, the area in which the wind corn monster has been seen is very, very little. Nearly every encounter has been on that road, so Co Road, in Isabella County. It's interesting though, like to think about why this creature decided to stay in such a small area, and how it remains so elusive. Also, like, what's gonna happen if they plant something other than corn in those fields? Does it become the soybean monster, the wheat monster, the cabbage monster? Those are also shorter crops, so then our monster's gonna have to crawl. Also, where does he go when the corn is harvested? Does he have like a cabin in the nearby woods? Scary movies and stories have taught, well, me enough at least, that if there's a scary cornfield, don't go near it. So what other residents have experienced this creature? Like, because there's gotta be some. Maybe it's time to take a trip. If you try to find out more about this legend, by the way, be aware that a lot of the online sites spell the town as W-Y-N-N, but the correct spelling, according to maps at least and the town welcome sign, is W-I-N-N. The Wahila is said to be a wolf-like creature the size of a bear that roams northern Michigan, Canada, and Alaska. It doesn't travel in groups, it's very solitary, likely due to its massive size and lack of local predators. So it's larger and more heavily built than normal wolves, with a wide head and proportionally larger feet and long, pure white fur. The animal's hind legs are said to be shorter than the front legs, and the tracks show widely spaced toes. Witnesses describe this as being 3.5 feet to 4 feet at the shoulder. Legends describe the Wahila as an evil spirit with supernatural powers and describe it as doing what? Just killing people and removing their heads. It has been theorized that the Wahila is an amphicyanid, which is a prehistoric carnivore of the Miocene era, or a dire wolf, a prehistoric hyena, or maybe even a completely new species of canine. The Wahila supposedly travels through a section of land called the Nahanni Valley on its way to and from Alaska. The area is also known as Headless Valley due to the large number of headless corpses found in it, all attributed to the Wahila. This snow white creature allegedly travels silently on its massive paws and simply chomps the head of any unfortunate person it encounters on its way. According to an old Lowe legend, a ferocious hyena-like animal once roamed the American prairies. And due to its habit of killing and devouring dogs, the Lowe called this creature the Shunka Warakene, which translates to carrying off dogs. Every night this creature snuck into Lowe camps, and every morning a couple more dogs were found missing. So when the folks figured out that this had gone on long enough, they decided to ambush the animal. Armed with muskets and bows and arrows, they crouched in the darkness beside their teepees, not far from where the dogs were tethered. Suddenly, a strange wolf-like creature slinked into camp from out of the darkness. Nobody had ever really seen anything like it before. The very brave folks sprang from their hiding places and peppered the animal with arrows and musket balls. Incredibly, the missiles failed to bring the creature down, and they only made it angry. With a crazy shriek, the animal lunged at its tormentors. The warriors drove it back with their spears and clubs, and after a tremendous struggle, the animal retreated back into darkness. And everybody was like, let's follow it. They tracked the creature throughout the night and most of the following day, and eventually they did manage to corner it. The creature put up a very good last stand and fought to the bitter end. When it finally fell, it cried, just like a human being. Once the creature was dead, a lot of folks skinned its carcass, painted its hide, and placed it in a medicine bundle. It was under the belief that whoever wore this medicine bundle in battle would be immune to enemy weapons, much like the monster whose skin it contained. The Nain Rouge, or Red Dwarf, is more than a cryptid to the city of Detroit. It's a devilish embodiment of the hardships that have befallen the city throughout its existence. According to legend, before every disaster in the city, the Red Dwarf makes an appearance to foretell the upcoming hardship. The first sighting of the Demon of the Strait occurred in 1701, when Antoine de la Mothe Cadillac, founder of Detroit, allegedly saw the being sitting on a bench. When the dwarf poked a stick at Cadillac, he retaliated with a drawn sword and nailed his adversary into retreat. As a result, Cadillac lost all of his money and moved back to France. Every hardship that befell Detroit from that moment forward came with an alleged sighting of the dwarf, sometimes climbing light poles disguised as a little human. Immediately before the catastrophic events, it's been spotted before riots, snowstorms, big battles, and a lot of other events. And finally for today, Dowagiac is the town in which reputable sources have supposedly spotted the odd Dewey Lake monster ever since the 1960s. These sources claimed a beast resembling a gorilla, bear, and cat mixed together, measuring 10 feet tall and covered with fur, has chased after multiple residents. In June of 1964, a woman claimed the 500-pound cryptid chased her into her home, and 3 more girls said they encountered it later that night on a wooded roadway. Multiple armed locals are said to have combed the woods looking for the monster who frightened the girls and the woman, but they found nothing. Some say the large creature is also armed with claws and scales, allowing it to swim in its namesake lake. So perhaps the monster is just living up to its name and hiding beneath the surface of water until it can roam the woods again. Or maybe it's taking a page out of Nessie's book. Cryptids like to hang out in places that aren't just the good old US of A. A one-eyed Indian tale of battling a band of red-haired hunchback giants has caused speculation that a tribe of Stone Age beings may inhabit the jungles of northern Peru. The men were described as olive-skinned, barefooted, hunched back, more than 6 foot 6 inches tall, with feet twice the size of normal folks. One scientist recently said he doubted their existence, but a well-known amateur anthropologist said it was well within scientific probability. Now, these giants have only been reported in San Juan province, an area of rainforests and wooded foothills east of the Andes. Its roughly 200,000 residents have no telephone service or paved roads, according to my research. Rumors of giant tribesmen have circulated frequently in the past and received fresh momentum when an explorer said he had stumbled upon them. Carlos Terrelza, discoverer of the ruins of a lost Indian city in San Martin province, said he had found the giants when he was lost for 2 weeks in the jungle. He said they were clad only in animal skins with reddish hair and spoke a dialect he had never heard. It also fled at his approach. Well, days later, 2 Lima newspapers, Ultima Hora and La Prensa, quoted an Indian guide, Encarnacion Napuri, as saying that at one point a group of about 15 folks armed with thick wooden clubs, stone-headed axes, and hardwood lances attacked a camp of professional hunters. La Prensa said the tribesmen had abducted 3 women and wounded 5 men in the camp before being driven off by the blast. Altamahora said 5 men, 3 women, and more had been injured, but did not mention any kidnapping. Well, the director at the time of the Regional Center of Indian Remains, Cristobal Crespana, said, "I don't believe in the existence of these hunchbacked men. They correspond to precisely none of the racial traits of the people seen in the Andean region so far." But Carlos A. Silva, a policeman and amateur anthropologist who traveled widely in the Peruvian jungles, said the indigenous Peruvians could adapt very easily to live into the forested areas of the foothills. Nevertheless, not going there. An interesting video has emerged from Mexico that shows what appears to be a small bipedal humanoid scurrying across a road. The video was reportedly captured in January of 2024 by a security camera at a farm in the city of Monterrey and subsequently offered online back in May. So a small dark form exits from a wooden area on the side of the road and then darts across the dirt path. Then it just vanishes back into the brush. So some folks believe it is the sighting of a duende, a humanoid figure of folklore that is comparable to goblins, dwarves, gnomes, or leprechauns. Fun fact, by the way, in Spanish, duende originated as a contraction of the phrase dueño de casa, effectively master of the house. Or perhaps it's derived from some similar mythical being of the Visigoth or Swabian culture, given it kind of looks similar to the tomte of the Swedish language, which is conceptualized, if I'm not mistaken, as a mischievous spirit inhabiting a dwelling. Nevertheless, little guy? Demonic? Spanish folklore is rich in tales and legends about various types of duendes. The anjanas, buscosos, dianos, enanos, elfos, hadas, gnomos. I could go on and on. In some regions of Spain, duendes may have other names, like the trasnos in Galicia, folets in Catalonia, trasgas in Asturias, menutos or mendos in Valle de Hecho, and I hope I didn't butcher any of those, and if I did, I'm so sorry, I tried. In November of 2009, Greg Warner and his team reported on and supplied photographs of a giant snake near the jungle city of Iquitos in Peru. So the photograph showed a trail at least 5 meters wide, and they also provided video evidence to support their photos and eyewitness accounts. It's believed to be a yakumama, which is an enormous serpent believed to be the mother of all aquatic animals. According to legends, the yakumama would suck up any living thing that passed within 100 steps of it. So to protect themselves, the local indigenous folks would blow on a conch horn before entering the water. Why? Well, they believed that the yakumama would reveal itself if it was present if they did that. So in the human settlement, 24 de Mayo, the dwellers got into a panic when they saw that on the enormous swamp located at the back part of the settlement, a huge silhouette of dragged grass and mud was visible, attributing the event to the sakamama, although other folks thought it was a gigantic boa. So one eyewitness claimed it started to move like this, circulate until it found a way out over there, and then you cannot say there was a channel over there because everything was plain. As you can see, it was plain. All this is a trail that it made. It wanted to get out that way, but then turned over there, it turned over this way, it took all this. So if you keep walking that way, you can see this, it remained like this. I know, a little confusing, but still, this is evidence that the black boa, the yakumama, the sakamama, the minokau are one and the same in terms of cryptid classification, because all modern description and photographic evidence kind of points to this conclusion. Strikingly tall skeletons uncovered in the Ecuador and Peru Amazon region are undergoing examination in Germany, according to a research team headed by British anthropologist Russell Dement. Well, since 2013, the team has reported finding half a dozen human skeletons dating to the early 1400s and the mid-1500s that measure between 7 to 8 feet in height. In late 2013, Dement received word that a skeleton had been uncovered by a Shuar local, approximately 70 miles from Cuenca, in the Loja province in Ecuador. So Dement traveled to the site and recovered the rib cage and the skull of a female which had been exposed by flooding, and the bones dated back like 600 years. So then they found the rest of the skeleton, and once assembled, it was about 7'4" in height. So this prompted the formation of a research team, including 4 researchers from the Freie University in Germany and the assistance of locals. So recognizing it as a controversial area of research, Dement noted, even though I had been working with that university for many years, I was concerned that they might not give a grant for someone looking for giants. Because he's like, to outsiders, especially scientists, I understand this sounds a little harebrained. And because of the sensational nature of this, he had to be extremely diligent in research because, well, there's going to be skeptics. 3 skeletons that were complete and 2 partials that had no disfiguration and were relatively healthy were all found. Now, these burials were elaborate. These bodies were wrapped in leaves, buried in thick clay, which helped to seal the skeletons and protect them against water intrusion. So everything was in fairly good condition. Dement had previously studied Amazonian indigenous communities for more than 2 decades, and he had heard the legends of the very tall, pale-skinned people who used to live nearby. Community elders described them to Dement as a race of large, peaceful Amazonians who were welcomed by the indigenous folks. However, the locals also believed that these people belonged to the spirit world and were very mythical. And in 2002, during an expedition to the coal mines in La Guarija, launched by the University of Florida and Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute, large thoracic vertebrae and ribs were unearthed by the students Jonathan Block and Carlos Jaramillo. So more fossils were unearthed over the course of the expedition, eventually adding up to like 186 fossils from 30 individuals. And this expedition lasted until 2004. During which the fossils of titanoboas were mistakenly labeled as those of crocodiles. Well, in 2009, Mike Warner, a retired lithographer from Lisbon, poured his life savings into a search for the giant snake. First, he commissioned satellite imagery, and then there was the 2-week expedition to the Amazon rivers. He was accompanied by his son Greg, and they traveled there to try and capture evidence of the titanoboa. They had a whole team, they were doing aerial surveys and everything. Well, after 12 days in the jungle, hazardous weather conditions, hundreds of still photographs, and hours of video, these guys found a photo of a titanoboa. This thing was 40 meters long and 2 meters wide. Sure, there's been some debate about just how large a modern snake can grow, but evidence is pointing to the big snake of legend. And hey, Mike and his son were like, we're gonna come back, we're gonna do more. And I'm like, okay, good luck folks, not for me. Move over, Bigfoot. The water leaper is a malicious creature from Welsh mythology and folklore that lived in swamps, ponds, rivers, and lakes. It was said to be a giant limbless frog or toad with a bat's membranous wings, sometimes even a bird's feathery wings, and a long reptilian tail with a large stinger at the very tip. So it leapt across the water using its wings, hence its name, and its favorite prey were fish, poor sheep who wandered too close to the water's edge, or even fishermen. And don't look at me, I don't fish. It was said that its appearance alone was enough to strike one dead. Never mind its venomous stinger or crazy screech that could have you doing this. This being was also said to really badly shriek. By the way, that shriek would stun its prey. And it would leap up from the water, it would snap the fishing line of fishermen, dragging whatever poor soul into the water's abyss. Only to be speedily engulfed by a malignant and quite insatiable big mouth. Now, I don't know if there's been any modern sightings. It might be an extinct situation, maybe an endangered situation. Whatever it is, I'm not tempting fate. In Northern English folklore, the Barghest or Barhest is a mythical monstrous black dog with large teeth and claws, though in other cases the name can refer to a ghost or household elf, especially in Northumberland and Durham. So in terms of the origins of the name, ghost in Northern England was pronounced guest, and the origin is thought to be of the combination Burgest, town ghost. Others explain it as similar to the German Berggeist, mountain ghost, or the bear ghost. Another derivation is Bargeist, German for spirit of the funeral bier. So in Yorkshire, England, one notable case is said to frequent a remote gorge named Troller's Gill in the Yorkshire Dales. A ballad entitled The Legend of the Troller's Gill can actually be found in a historical book, and it has to do with all of this. The ballad recounts the tale of a man who ventures forth to the horrid gill of the limestone hill. I did say it was a song, right? In order to summon and confront the Barghest in an act of ritual magic. The man's lifeless body is discovered soon afterwards with inhuman marks upon his, chest. There is also a story of a Barghest entering the city of York occasionally, where, according to legend, it preys on lone travelers in the city's narrow snickleways. Furthermore, the building at number 1, the Shambles, is named Barghest. The town of Whitby is also associated with the spectre. And yet another one haunted an area of wasteland between Reghorn and Headingley Hill near Leeds. In Durham, during the 1870s, a shape-shifting Barghest was said to live near Darlington and was said to take the form of a headless man, who would vanish in flames, a headless lady, a white cat, a rabbit, a dog, or a black dog. Another was said to live in an uncanny-looking dale between Darlington and Houghton near Throstlenest. If I got it wrong, I'm sorry. The Barghest often allegedly serves as an an omen of death. At the passing of a notable person, it may appear, followed by all the other dogs of the local area in a kind of funeral procession, heralding the person's death with howling and barking. Also, if you're gonna get in its way, it's gonna strike out with its paw, and you're gonna wind up with a wound that never heals. Besides taking the form of a large black dog with fiery eyes, it might also become invisible and or walk about with the sound of rattling chains. Oh, and it might foretell the death of an individual by laying across the threshold of their house. And like the vampire, they can't cross rivers. So, good to know. If your dog crosses the river, it's a dog. If not, get out of there. The rougarou legend has been spread for many generations, either directly from French settlers to Louisiana or via the French-Canadian immigrants centuries ago. Rougarou represents a variant pronunciation and spelling of the original French loup-garou, which is the version I heard about when I was younger at summer camp. It was a fun French camp. According to Barry Jean Ancelet, an academic expert on Cajun folklore and professor at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette in America, the tale of the rougarou is a common legend across French Louisiana. So both words, so loup-garou and rougarou, are used interchangeably. Everybody's got their own preference. Just so we all don't get confused today, I'm just gonna stick with rougarou for the purpose of the legend. So in the Cajun legends, the creature is said to prowl the swamps around Acadiana and greater New Orleans, specifically the sugarcane fields and woodlands of the regions. The rougarou most often is described as a creature with a human body and the head of a wolf or dog, similar to a lot of modern werewolf legends, and often the storytelling has been used to inspire fear and obedience. One such example is stories that have been told by elders to persuade younger generations to behave. So according to another variation, the beast will hunt down and kill Catholics who do not follow the rules of Lent. And this coincides with the French Catholic loup-garou stories, according to which the method for turning into a werewolf is to break Lent 7 years in a row. For what it's worth, I've been ignoring Lent for much longer and I'm not a werewolf. I'm part vampire, not part wolf. Long story. Anyways, a part of the legend says that the rougarou is under the spell for 101 days, and after that time the curse is transferred from person to person when the rougarou draws another human's life source. During the day, the creature returns to human form, and although acting sickly, the human refrains from telling others of the situation for fear of being killed. Other stories range from the rougarou as a rabbit to the rougarou being derived from witchcraft. In the latter claim, only a witch can make a rougarou, either by turning into a wolf herself or by cursing others. I don't want to be cursed. In the folklore of Lee County, South Carolina, the lizard man of Scape or Swamp, also known as the lizard man of Lee County, is an entity said to inhabit the swampland of the region. On July 14th of 1988, the sheriff's office investigated a report of a car that was damaged overnight while parked at a home in the area of Browntown, outside Bishopville, South Carolina, on the edges of the swamp. So the car reportedly had tooth marks and scratches, with hair and muddy footprints left behind. The sheriff at the time, one Liston Truesdale, noted that this was the start of various claims that eventually snowballed into a story about a lizard man in the swamp. Prompted by the news of the vehicle damage, local Christopher Davis reported to the sheriff that his car was damaged by a creature he described as green, wet-like, about 7 feet tall, had 3 fingers, red eyes, skin like a lizard, and snake-like scales. Oh, and it happened like 2 weeks prior. So according to Christopher, he was driving home from working the night shift at a fast food restaurant when his car got a flat tire. And after fixing it, he saw this creature walking towards him. He got in his car, began to drive, but then the creature was soon on top of the car. So Christopher hit the brakes and the creature rolled off, which gave Christopher enough time to escape. Well, coverage by newspapers and media resulted in really increased attention for the claims. Local businesses began selling Lizard Man t-shirts. The local Chamber of Commerce was like, okay, well, it's good for the community. Fast forward to 2009, CNN mentioned the Lizard Man legend in a story about a couple in Bishopville who reported damage to their vehicle, including traces of redness. 2015, local television station WCIV featured photos and videos claiming to be Lizard Man, allegedly taken by some unidentified individuals. 2017, the South Carolina Emergency Management Division sent out a humorous tweet being like, hey, just be careful during the solar eclipse. You might want to remain vigilant for Lizard Man. So looks like he's still creeping around. And the shug monkey is a mythical creature in the folklore of Cambridgeshire, sharing the features of a dog and a monkey, which reportedly haunt Slow Hill Lane, which leads from the village of West Ratting to nearby Balsham. So this creature, said to have the body of a jet black shaggy sheepdog and the face of a monkey with staring eyes, is not believed to be an escaped primate. But It's kind of terrifying. Local writer and broadcaster James Wentworth Day, who first related stories of the shug monkey in Here Are Ghosts and Witches, described it as a curious variation of black shug, while local folklorist Polly Howitt suggests that maybe there's some origins in Norse mythology here. Local police constable A. Taylor, who heard the stories, was like, yeah, it's a cross between a big dog and a monkey with big shining eyes. Sometimes it shuffles along on its hind legs, other times it whizzes past on all fours. Okay, well, if you see that, run! Ever thought you saw something glittering in the distance, but your eyes were deceiving you? Well, Stella's experience took place on September 2nd of 2022, back in Chicago. She went out onto a balcony and she was looking in the distance and saw this weird large tree. It was about like 20 feet away, and one of the branches on the tree was bowing pretty heavily, but there was nothing there that could have made sense for it to be having weight. So as Stella was staring at the branch and trying to make sense of what was going on, an intense feeling of dread and fear came over her, as if every part of her body was screaming at her to turn around and run, but she didn't know why. And at that very moment, the branch that she had been observing began to shake violently, and despite everything still screaming at her to leave, curiosity had now gotten the better of her. So she started to move along the railing to get a bit of a closer look. A small form began to glimmer on a branch, and as Stella continued to watch in shock, a transparent human figure that shimmered a yellowish white color developed. She snapped out of her fixated stare and quickly took a step back from the railing, realizing finally that maybe this is something kind of scary. The shimmery being eventually dropped out of the tree, landing behind a man who happened to be walking past at the time. Now this guy spun around, his reaction similar to somebody who had been struck from behind, and was kind of confused when all he saw was a cloud of smoke. Oh right, the shimmery thing had disappeared in a puff of smoke after hitting the ground. Now Stella was like, okay, I'll wait around, let's see what happens. Nothing came back. Thankfully for her, at the same time, another neighbor just a couple floors below had observed exactly the same thing. And when those two conferred, they were like, okay, what's going on? Thankfully, they also managed to track down the guy that was walking past. And between the three of them, they were like, okay, he felt something on his back. I saw something. You saw something. What is going on here? Oh, and they also all confirmed that they were feeling that weird, overwhelming dread. Up north we go next. We've got an aquatic cryptid in Vancouver. So Taylor Wallace is a private investigator based out of BC who was hired to find the evidence of a person that had gone missing without a trace. And all he found, after more than a 6-year investigation, was evidence of large clawed creatures that could very well be consuming people. The photos he has provided as proof show a large claw print in the sand that was found, among others, next to a seal without its head that he discovered in 2016, a large claw print cut into some solid stone found in 2022, a cave made by something with large claws that has a red fluid-soaked entrance with a red claw print on the cave wall above it, and 3 separate scat samples from a large animal, believed to be one of these mysterious creatures. Oh, and also what possibly could be a human fingernail? So the area where all of this was found in was a couple 100 feet around a lake from a public beach, and there were dozens and dozens of large claw marks coming out of the water and onto the shore in various places that really didn't belong to any kind of water creature that Taylor could identify. And he's gone to this beach many times and is constantly looking for and gathering more evidence. Sadly, he has found another seal that was missing an important body part, and copious amounts of evidence of a large aquatic creature that's coming out of the ocean on a daily basis to feed on seals, ducks, and migrating snow geese. So not only are there large digs and claw prints in the hard ground everywhere, which were obviously made by a creature with some crazy claws, but the remains of all these dead other creatures are everywhere. While coyotes are the largest predators in the area, Taylor's never seen one in that park, and also the claw prints don't match up in really bad evidence. In a nearby park, Taylor's also collected more scat samples, and also one that might have traces of human evidence. And he's like, maybe this is from the human that he's been looking for that's been missing, so he can stop looking for that human. Also, very coincidence-wise, he's found evidence of these creatures in locations where people have gone missing without a trace. Do you believe in fairies? Now, while most folks like to think of them like helpful beings with multicolored hair, stunning wings, the reality is not all sugar plums and sweetness. American soldier Sam Barrett comes from a long line of military personnel, if we're talking expertise. Currently deployed on a peacekeeping mission, so the location of the story is kind of anonymous for safety, but the current climate where he is always raining or foggy. For context. So one night earlier this year, while retrieving a cache of buried weapons, he and his platoon noticed some lights in the forest that were kind of far away. They were about 10 small lights all moving pretty erratically. Now, another member of Sam's group began to hear what sounded like two people whispering in a language nobody could understand. And it was very quiet at first, but it started to get louder until it sounded like they were whispering right next to his ear. Soon, about 10 more voices joined in on the whispering, and they were all talking at the same time. The men began to panic. They were like, oh, maybe these lights are a distraction, which apparently that was a common tactic used by the local enemies. And they're like, uh-oh, ambush. So Caleb, a teammate and good friend of Sam's, suddenly started speaking loudly, which is not what you want to do in this situation. It seemed as though he was trying to communicate with his father, who had died 2 years earlier, and he dropped all of his belongings before running towards the lights. Now Sam was like, okay, my buddy's lost it, or maybe there's mind control going on. Now, fearing for Caleb and worrying like, yo, you're a dummy, you're gonna give up our position, he chased after him. But Caleb kept repeating, I'm coming, father, as he sprinted towards the lights. Well, as they got closer and the lights got bigger, Sam found it odd he couldn't really make out any definition, like there was nothing behind them. They just looked like lights floating in midair. Now, Caleb was on his knees with his arms at his side. He was praying in front of these lights. And he was in like a trance, and Sam tried snapping him out of it, but he was like, nope, my father, the lights, the lights. Now, eventually the commander of the team showed up, looked at everything, and was like, uh-oh, the fairies have him. Caleb eventually passed out, and the lights disappeared almost instantly. After being carried back to the base and returning to consciousness, Caleb had zero recollection of what happened. And not just for the evening. The entire day was a blank. Terrifying. We can't have a cryptid list without Nessie. For the uninitiated, this is the preferred nickname of the Loch Ness Monster over in Scotland. Spottings of this girlie go all the way back to 565 AD, making her a pretty grown woman at this time. Tied with Bigfoot for the most common cryptid being spotted, she's very popular, but also very much a recluse. This most recent spotting is from earlier this year, and in early March there was a Nessie enthusiast who couldn't believe what he saw when he was monitoring a webcam video of the lake from his home. Two separate clips captured something stirring in the mysterious depths close to shoreland lodges near Fort Augustus on the loch's southern shore. Now, our expert described that he almost couldn't believe what he was seeing. It all happened so fast. In the first video clip he got, something moved on the surface for a couple of seconds, and then he saw two shadowy wakes moving in two lines under the surface, moving to the left approximately 15 feet before disappearing. Now, the expert estimates that the wake was roughly 6 to 8 feet long, and the water was way too agitated for the disturbance to have been caused by a fish. This was the first confirmed sighting of Nessie in over 7 months, which kind of broke the drought of Nessie news. Hey, maybe she just wants to hibernate. Finally for today, a tale of the Matagami Bigfoot. So this tale begins about 20 years ago, when our anonymous narrator purchased property on the lake. It's a pretty common cottage and vacation spot. He had grown up spending summers in the area, and he's very knowledgeable about wildlife noises, which very important. It was about 9:15 at night, right when darkness was starting to take over. He and his wife were sitting by the fire, facing like all the woods on their property, and they were like, okay, let's go inside because mosquito bites were brutal. He was staring at the fire alone when he heard what he described as about like 3 whacks around a kilometer away, and didn't really think about it much until about 15 minutes later when he heard the sound again. But this time it was closer. Now, originally he was like, okay, maybe it's a moose hitting their antlers against a tree, but it didn't make sense for what time of year it was. Being able to barely see through the tree line, he heard the noise again. And yes, another 15 minutes, this time it was closer once again. He didn't really have anything to protect himself with, so he bolted into the cottage, and the whacks came again, even closer. Now, he never heard them once he got fully inside the house, but they kept happening at night over the next so many years. Now, if you're wondering, okay, maybe it's just somebody pulling a prank, his property is water access only. So any random strangers aren't gonna come all that way for a prank. Alrighty everybody, so since I'm Canadian, how about we start off today with a report out of West Dalhousie, Nova Scotia. Back in 2010, a man named Andre Shields entered a contest with the province of Nova Scotia to win a chance to get a prize in a commercial for tourism on TV. The area he decided to go visit still had frozen snow, and since it was the end of March, apparently the hike was nice. From time to time, Andre felt like somebody was watching him, but he assumed it was like a coyote or something, since it was an area that was heavily populated with wildlife. Oh, by the way, his brilliant idea was to show off the caves in the area for the contest, which hey, I'm not an expert, but exploring caves alone sounds pretty dang dangerous to me. Andre has mentioned that at the time, he had a fascination with caves, and still does to this day. And like, once again, I get it, they're neat, but like, safety first? So it was when he was filming the caves that Andre started hearing footsteps outside. The cave he was in was made up of split granite, incredibly squared off like a tomb with the features of a pyramid outside, as well as possibly Nova Scotia's only known stone animal figure, to the extent of his knowledge. I haven't really been able to find info to confirm or deny, so let me know in the comments if you know otherwise. After a few minutes, he realized the footsteps were bipedal. aka somebody who can walk on two legs, so probably not a random coyote. Which, by the way, props to him for not being terrified of those creatures, since the thought of seeing those in the wild would send me running. Around the same time, he started smelling something like dirty gym shoes, and apparently it was like really bad, and I don't even want to try to picture what that smells like because I don't need to gag again on here. Been there, done that, not fun. Finally, common sense kicked in for Andre and he decided to try and get the heck out of there. He exited the cave and looked to the west and saw something standing behind a tree, and ergo decided to go the other way and used a tree as a fireman's pole to slide down. Now at this point, I think he thought it might have been a bear, and speaking from experience, yikes dude, your safety is so not worth this video or contest. So he was tiptoeing back towards the trail when he turned around and saw something using fingers to peer through the branches at him. The silhouette was that of a very tall man, and its hands had black nails, light brown hair, its eyes were very large and dark, and the face looked like a monkey man with pinkish brownish skin. His words, not mine. He started his camera back up and tried recording, and the creature wasn't moving while he was. And soon enough, his reaction of absolute fear was recorded when he started running. Eventually, he stopped at a large puddle to catch his breath and saw where something huge had stepped into a smaller tree and the moss, leaving a massive print, and into the water, leaving another. So he took some pictures and kept going, realizing it had come from the same direction he was running towards. Well, he kept running, he noticed oddly bent trees, broken branches, and just got the heck out of there. He didn't dare venture into the woods again until like 2022. And gee, I wonder why. Next up, we have a spotting from last August in Texas. So this all started with a bizarre daylight animal sighting. Tina Colleague was pretty stumped, so she reached for a camera. She's like, okay, let's get some pictures. I don't know what this is, but maybe somebody else will. But sadly, the photos didn't do much to clarify the critter's identity. Instead, they opened a Pandora's box of cryptid theories, which is where we come in. All Tina knows for sure is that the animal enjoyed chowing down on berries that had fallen from a bush in her hill country village backyard. In an interview, she later recalled, she was inside, she looked out into the yard and saw an animal and was like, okay, what is it? The creature was a yellowish brown color and appeared to be almost the size of a large dog, with a long tail that almost touched the ground and very large pricked ears. After getting the images, she uploaded them to Nextdoor, that's a little social media thing, for a little local feedback. And her neighbors were like, I don't know either. And that's when all the different theories and possibilities started pouring in. Because it's the internet, everybody's got their 2 cents. They included everything from a coyote dog mix to the chupacabra. So I'm sure you can guess where my thoughts lie on the matter. Now, that name refers to a mythical reptile-like creature in parts of the Americas that is said to stand 3 to 4 feet high, hop like a kangaroo, and attack and drink the life source of livestock. Some folks also thought it might have been the legend of an area mountain lion that a lot of people have long sighted but never caught on camera. Now, this isn't the first time that the Texas parks and wildlife officials have proven stumped by something caught on camera. In April of last year, a wildlife camera in the Rio Grande Valley revealed a never-before-seen animal as well. But when it comes to the case of Tina's unknown species, a lot of folks who watched the video were like, we've got some guesses. They're like, okay, maybe it's a wolverine, it could be a bush dog, optical illusion, maybe 2 wild hogs passing by one another. So Rachel Melstoff of the San Antonio Zoo weighed in, thinking that it might be a dog or a canine dealing with mange or other skin conditions. And hey, without better pictures, who knows? My theory? A chupacabra, just wanting to enjoy some fresh berries in peace. Who doesn't like some fresh raspberries or blueberries? I know I do. This next one is for my Mothman fans. I know y'all are out there. This tale is from 2016, which is back when I was in my first year of university. Ah, little Alexa, back when I thought a career in radio was still possible. This story comes out of Point Pleasant in West Virginia, and over there, Mothman is a local legend that over the years has gained worldwide fame. A man who wishes to stay anonymous says he was driving along State Route 2 and saw something jump from tree to tree, so he pulled off the road and snapped a couple of photos. As you do. Now, he's declined any kind of on-camera interview, doesn't want his name out there, but he was adamant that the pictures had not been doctored. He said he recently moved to the area for work and didn't even know about the legend. Look, just off the bat, if the guy wants to stay anonymous, that only adds to legitimacy for me. He's not in it for money, he's not in it for fame. What else does he want? In the pictures, the creature appears to have wings with pointed tips and long legs, bent at an awkward angle. Now, Point Pleasant locals such as Carolyn Harris believe the pictures could be real because there have been so many other sightings over the years. She even said, I definitely know the Mothman is real. Now, the Mothman was reportedly sighted in Point Pleasant by witnesses from November 15th to December 15th of 1966 originally. Author John Keel popularized local folklore about the creature with his 1975 book, The Mothman Prophecies, which was later adapted into a 2002 feature film with the same title, starring a lot of people, including Richard Gere. You know, you've seen it. Harris has owned the Mothman Diner in Point Pleasant for over 48 years and also helped start the Mothman Festival. oh, I love that. She's mentioned, like, there's been too many sightings of the Mothman for her to not believe. She's talked to a lot of first responders, the sheriff's department, and they've made a believer out of her. Some folks believe the Mothman is a bad omen, only appearing when catastrophe is about to strike. But there's been many claims that the winged, red-eyed creature was seen right before the Point Pleasant Silver Bridge collapse in 1967. Now, back to Harris, she's met a lot of Mothman believers over the years who visit her diner. There's a lot of news sources that have talked to local experts, and I know one of them was Jeff Wamsley, the local Mothman expert on everything, and the owner of the Mothman Museum. And they're like, okay, you see these, what do you think? And he's mentioned, like, with modern technology, it's almost impossible to know for sure if the pictures are real. But it doesn't matter if they're real or not. The benefits the Legend of Mothman brings to the town are very real. He's like, it's a good thing. It brings a lot of people to the area. He's here to stay. Me personally, I think it's real. So technically, I don't know the location of this next video, but it was definitely something that had me going, what the bleep? And at this point, that's newsworthy. The narrator of the video starts off by saying, I'm at a horse stable right now, as you can see. The other day I was walking over here, I saw a guy working the land. He works in the horse stable. Okay, we've got that. So our narrator's like, hey, anytime I see a guy working the land, I get curious. I got some questions. So he's like, okay, have you ever seen anything interesting out there? And oftentimes they'll be like, oh yeah, you know, I've seen some coyotes, as one does. But this is where, once again, Alexa interjects, because I would love to know how people are so casual with talking about coyotes, like, So, back to our narrator. He's like, okay, so as the conversation's warming up, he's like, hey, new guy, you ever seen anything out here you can't explain? And apparently the moment he said that, this new guy's eyes lit up. He was like, it's really weird you asked me that question. He's like, just last week, my buddy took the craziest video back in these woods. So he pulls up his buddy's private Facebook page, and well, it's a private Facebook page. He was like, oh, I'm gonna send you this link, which if you ever try to send a link from a private page, not gonna happen. So apparently we had to pull up a video, one phone, another phone, screen record, all these things. We've got the video. I haven't seen anybody be able to explain what the heck is going on in it. So, what do you guys think? What's super weird about the video is the guy who took the video won't even go back into the woods anymore. And did you see the dog in the video? So that dog was growling and was looking over into the area where the apparition appears. And just what a crazy video. To quote the guy, I can't believe it, and I haven't been able to figure out what's going on. I know we've been showing the TikTok since I've started talking, so like, what do you folks think? Hey look, having a dog going haywire adds to the validity for me. Animals are super perceptive of the weird and ooky spooky, and they're a good marker of just, what the heck? Okie dokie everyone, we're gonna end today with a video that's close to home for me, a spotting of Bigfoot from Northern Ontario. Now it isn't specified where, but since the terrain looks pretty familiar to me, I'd be willing to bet on Northeastern Ontario to be specific. It shows what clearly appears to be a Sasquatch walking in a wooded area near a body of water. The video was shared by the Rocky Mountain Sasquatch organization, and it was stated along with the video that these boaters in Northern Ontario had recently captured the incident. No specific time or location of the sighting was provided, but you know my guess. So the boaters were recording the nearby shoreline when a large biped with reddish brown hair stepped out from the woods and walked across the open shoreline, providing a clear, even though brief, view to the onlookers. It quickly disappears into the trees, but the fluid movement of the Sasquatch is noted, along with its deftness in navigating the rocky and steep terrain with ease. So because of the dexterity demonstrated in the video recording, I find it difficult to imagine that this was anything other than an actual Sasquatch, as opposed to a human dressed in a heavy and bulky suit. I've been a mascot a number of times. You don't move that fluidly. This isn't the only time I've spoken about Sasquatch-type cryptids being spotted up north, so I genuinely think there's a whole slew of them enjoying the deep woods and slightly cooler climate up there. I vote we let them exist in peace.
Loveland frog. Hailing from Loveland, Ohio, this massive-sized creature is said to resemble a humanoid frog, walking on two legs and standing at just over 4 feet tall. So I say massive, but I'm talking massive by frog standards here. What's great about this particular cryptid is that there have been multiple spotted at once. The very first sighting happened back in 1955, where a man spotted what he described as 3 short humanoid creatures with frog-like faces under a bridge. One of them also had a bar-like wand device that emitted sparks, leaving a scent of alfalfa and almonds. What an oddly specific smell to describe. There weren't any other reported sightings of this creature for another 17 years, but these 2 sightings happened in a span of just 2 weeks and were both reported by police officers. I always get more interested in cryptid or paranormal accounts when police officers report on it. It's not like it's, Chuck from the hardware store being like, yeah, I saw a frog man. Sure, cops have lied, I think we all know that, but making a report about spotting a frog monster in the middle of the road is, it's an odd thing for a cop to lie about. Anyway, the second sighting happened on March 3rd, 1972, where Officer Ray Shockeye, what a name there, eh? Ray Shockeye, spotted a 4-foot-tall humanoid creature with leathery skin and a froggish face, which he saw hop over a guardrail into the Little Miami River. The second sighting happened 2 weeks later, where an officer named Mark Matthews, boring name, spotted what he thought was the same creature before firing at it and missing. This is said to be a false version of the report, with the official one being that he did hit the creature only to discover that it was a large iguana and not a mutated frog monster, but that seems far less likely to me. I smell a cover-up. It needs to be solved. Later on in the month, a local farmer also claimed to have seen the elusive creature, so there you go. So look, I'm a total frog freak, I love the little hoppy guys, and I for one much hope that this thing exists, and I think it does. If I ever find myself a trip to Ohio, I'm driving straight to Loveland, where I'm just gonna scour every pond there is with a giant net, and I'm gonna catch him.
Number 3. Mothman. The next cryptid is said to have spent his time around West Virginia in the mid to late 60s, scaring locals and possibly even predicting local tragedies before they happened. In November of 1966, 2 grave diggers were practicing their trade in a cemetery in Clendenin, West Virginia. It was a dark and stormy night, but these men had worked in a graveyard for many years and were not easily spooked, or so they thought. When they looked up into one of the trees, they saw a strange man-like figure perched in its branches, watching them. He had glowing red eyes and gigantic 10-foot wings, and even after the initial shock wore off of the gravediggers, they reported feeling an intense sense of dread and foreboding due to his presence. A few days later, 2 young couples were making a day trip in their car near Point Pleasant. While they were driving near a former military munitions site, a figure matching the description given by the gravediggers swooped down from the sky and started to chase the vehicle. As sightings of the creature continued to come in over the next year, the creature was dubbed the Mothman by the local papers. Some of the locals believed that the Mothman was living in a vacant nuclear power plant outside of Point Pleasant and was possibly the escaped product of some kind of accident or secret government experiment. The dread-inducing encounters and sightings suddenly came to a stop in December 1967 when the Silver Bridge, which carried US Route 35 over the Ohio River, suddenly collapsed due to a faulty suspension wire and the weight of rush hour traffic. 46 people lost their lives in the tragic accident, and the Mothman suddenly disappeared. This led to theories that the Mothman showed up before disasters as a horrifying omen of approaching doom, with similar creatures being reported in other places before disasters, such as in Chernobyl prior to the famous disaster there. Is this creature really an omen of approaching doom? Or is there some other explanation for this terrifying and dreadful apparition that terrorized the inhabitants of the Point Pleasant area in West Virginia?
There is said to be a strange creature stalking the swamplands of Lee County, South Carolina, that being a big 7-foot-tall lizard man. On the 14th of July, 1988, sheriffs of Lee County were called to inspect damage done to a vehicle parked outside a home right next to the scape or swamp. The vehicle had large tooth marks and scratches on it. Once the story hit the news, a teenage boy by the name of Christopher Davis came out to make his own report to the police, saying that just 2 weeks prior, his car had been damaged, only he had actually seen the person, or rather the thing, that was responsible. Yes, it was our titular lizard man. Christopher described the creature to be a massive 7-foot-tall creature with 3 fingers per hand, red eyes, and green, wet, scaly skin. He had been driving home from work one night when he got a flat tire. When he got out of his car to fix it, he saw the creature making his way towards him. Abruptly got in his car and started driving off, but the creature was so fast that it caught up to him, driving at 64 kilometers an hour. That's about 40 miles per hour for the Americans in the audience. And Lizard Man is now on the roof of his car, scratching at it. Christopher quickly hit the brakes, causing the monster to fly off his vehicle before finally making his escape. When news of this report hit the papers, it caused a frenzy. Lizard Man was the talk of the town. More and more reports started coming in. The local radio station offered a $1 million reward to whoever could could catch the beast, so hunters started flocking to town to try and catch it. Stores in the area began selling Lizard Man t-shirts. It was Lizard Mania! And local sheriffs began writing off the supposed encounters as bear sightings, because if there are two things that look eerily similar, it's definitely a furry bear and a big green scaly lizard monster with red eyes and no hair to speak of. A bear? That's the best they could come up with? I'm not buying it.
Number 1. The North American house hippo. Our next cryptid is one that every school child in Canada has heard of, and has spent many a sleepless night worrying that they will cross paths with. These strange and frightening creatures bring an aura of terror that cannot ever be truly understood by people in a foreign country. However, I will try to help you understand what it is we are dealing with. Imagine, if you will, it's nighttime, in a kitchen just like yours. All is quiet, or is it? The North American house hippo is found throughout Canada and the eastern United States. House hippos are very timid creatures and are rarely seen, but they will defend their territory if provoked. They come out at night to search for food, water, and materials for their nests. The favorite foods of the house hippo are chips, raisins, and crumbs from peanut butter on toast. They build their nests in bedroom closets, using lost mittens, dryer lint, and bits of string. The nests have to be very soft and warm. House hippos sleep for about 16 hours a day. House hippos are extremely hard to spot. They enjoy admiring their reflections, hoarding socks, helping themselves to your devices, and annoying your pets. They're small creatures, only about the size of a hamster, and chances are most Canadians have one living in their household and don't even know it. House hippos are extremely intelligent, which is why they are rarely, if ever, found caught in mouse traps or other devices meant to capture typical household vermin. The house hippo is so rarely seen that many people believe that the creature is simply an elaborate hoax. But the rare person to encounter these creatures will never forget the sounds they make before charging and attempting to bite off one of your toes. Just how many house hippos are out there, and where did they come from? We may never know for certain.
Number 4. Mothman. Time to travel over to Waterville, Maine in late summer of 1971, where even I can't wrap my head around what happened. Dr. Sally Daniels was newly married and living in Killeen, Texas in a small duplex with her husband, who was in the Army. One night he was off duty while Sally was home alone in bed, and around 3 a.m. in the morning, otherwise known as witching hour, she woke up and saw a black figure standing at the bottom of her bed. She described it as 8 or 9 feet tall with huge big black wings and red eyes. Now, like any rational person, she tried closing her eyes and going back to sleep, or pretending it wasn't happening, but when she opened them again, the creature had moved to the right side of her bed. Sally was now frozen in fear, unable to scream, and darted under her blankets in a state of panic until the creature left. Shortly after this event, Sally moved to Maine because she was way too frightened to ever stay alone at night when her husband had duty. She had mentioned to her mom about seeing that huge black angel, and the mom was glad Sally came home, as that didn't sound good. At the time, she had never heard of the Mothman, but a few years later, she came across an article and a drawing of one, finally giving her an answer as to what she saw that fateful night. Number 3. More Bigfoot. So now we travel over to southeast Oklahoma with a tale from Susan Paulson. It was just another day, and she was checking on the animals when the weather radio blared out a tornado warning. So at the time there was a large storm over the area, and an advisory was indeed in effect. So while she wasn't surprised, Susan quickly closed up the barn door and hurried towards the house, finding her offspring and husband. They got themselves into a shelter, barred the metal door, and sat waiting for the worst. About 5 minutes after they settled into the dugout, the wind started picking up outside, and the whole family could hear thunder and rain outside of the doors. It was soon joined by the impacts of large hail hitting the metal door as the sound of the wind changed to a roar similar to a plane about to take off. They could hear the different sounds of objects hitting the door, but particularly a loud crack and lots of scraping on the door. In total, the entire event lasted maybe 7 minutes, but the family didn't try to leave the dugout until the wind died down, which, it makes sense. Susan's husband unbarred the door and tried opening it, but it would only open about an inch. They could see through the crack that the apple tree next to the dugout had blown over in front of the door, and heck, they tried to pry the door open every which way, slamming their bodies against the door, but nothing worked. The family was completely stuck in the shelter, but they knew at some point there would be people checking on places in the tornado's path, so they stuck a piece of wood in the crack of the door to hold it open, and got comfortable and prepared to wait. When 7 p.m. rolled around, they discovered that claustrophobia and panic attacks can strike anyone, no matter how prepared you are. So technically the family was safe and prepared physically for a week, but Susan's not sure their minds could have lasted a week. They could see it was dark through the crack of the door when a foul odor wafted in, smelling like a wet dog combined with a male goat and a teenager's armpits. Now Susan originally thought it was an overly pungent skunk, and she went to shut the door, but stopped when she heard what sounded like footsteps. The family started yelling for help, calling out to whoever was out there, but nobody responded. There was a shuffling sound and the smell got even stronger, causing Susan's eyes to water as she yelled out and pounded on the door. She heard a grunt before the sound of footsteps and the odor started fading away. Eventually the footsteps returned, and while everyone trapped, yelled and pounded on the door, once again there was no response and the footsteps left once more. This time Susan felt uneasy and barred the door shut. Something just wasn't right with this person. At around 3 in the morning, are we sensing a pattern? Susan's daughter woke up from a nightmare and started crying, and Susan was comforting her when she heard branches cracking and scraping against the door along with grunting. She woke her husband up, and once again, they pounded on the door and yelled, this time leaving the door open as much as possible. Just a couple of inches, man. When the noises outside stopped, they waited about 10 minutes to try to open the door, and this time it opened enough for the family to be able to step out. The trunk of the tree was lying near the door, but there was a pile of branches off to the side, and in that ground outside, there were a lot of footprints bigger than any foot Susan had ever seen. After tucking the offspring in their proper beds, Susan headed out to the barn to see if the animals were okay, and was about halfway there when she heard one of their hogs screaming. She ran towards the barn, and a few yards away, she could see her market-ready Hampshire barrow struggling and screaming while slung over the shoulder of a dark, hulking, human-like figure. Susan yelled at the figure to drop her peg, and it just turned and stared. She shined her flashlight at the creature's face, revealing a grayish face with a flat-looking nose. It was covered with thin, dark brown hair all over its body and massive feet. After a few seconds, it turned and walked into the cornfield towards the creek and disappeared from view. Yay for saving everyone, but bummer about losing the livestock. Number 2, a glimmer man in Chicago. So Stella's experience took place on September 2nd of 2022 after a day of running errands for her elderly father, when she returned to his apartment building and 6th-floor residence. She went out onto the balcony for, smoke break, just standing and allowing her mind to go blank when she noticed a weird large tree about 20 feet away. Yeah, I'll elaborate. So one of the branches on the tree was bowing quite heavily, but Stella couldn't see anything on it that could be responsible for the weighing down. As she was staring at the branch and trying to make sense of what her eyes were seeing, an intense feeling of dread and fear came over her, as if every part of her body was screaming at her to turn around and run, but she didn't know why. At this very moment, the bowing branch that she had just been observing began to shake violently, and despite her internal instincts still screaming at Stella to leave, curiosity had now gotten the better of her and she started to move along the railing to get a closer look. As your friendly narrator, this is where I interject and tell anyone with some sense to run, but hey, what do I know? A small form began to glimmer on the branch, and as Stella continued to watch in shock, a transparent human figure that shimmered a yellowish-white color developed. She snapped out of her fixated stare and quickly took a step back from the railing, realizing finally that this is something that should be feared. Glad the old common sense kicked in after the overwhelming fear, dread, and visual, should have kicked in sooner in my opinion, but that's just my usual snark kicking in. The shimmery being eventually dropped out of the tree, landing behind a man who happened to be walking past at the time. The walking man spun around, his reaction similar to, as if he had been hit with an object from behind, and was confused when all he saw was a cloud of smoke. The shimmery man had disappeared in said puff of smoke almost instantly after hitting the ground. Stella waited for some time, expecting to see this thing re-emerge, but it was completely gone. At the same time, another neighbor just a few floors below Stella and her dad had also observed exactly the same thing as her and managed to confirm all the same details. The neighbor and Stella then managed to track down the man who was walking past a few hours later, and after a conversation, confirmed that he had felt the weird impact, the overwhelming dread, but didn't see anything. Stella is positive that the Glimmer Man still roams the area, often feeling the overwhelming emotions from the day whenever she visits her dad, but hasn't spotted it since. My heart goes out to her, and I hope whatever it is buggers off soon. Number 1, not deer. I gotta say, I was definitely chuckling a bit at first when I was reading about this cryptid, but, seeing as where I'm from, that's just another way to lead into conversation about seeing a moose on the highway. And while the thought of driving within eyesight of a moose is scary enough, not deer are actually scarier. So this report comes from Elias Merritt in Roanoke, Virginia. Describing the time of day as almost dark, he was waiting for a friend to meet him for dinner when he experienced a feeling of something or someone watching him. He turned around suddenly and saw what he described as the shadow of a man behind a bush, which caused him to flee to the other side of the street, hiding in an area where he felt safer but could still see, if his friend was coming. As he stood in this new position, Elias saw 2 deer along the edge of the woods and watched them as they moved, observing that one of the deer seemed to have a bad back leg or was just injured. He walked in their direction to get a better look and see if he could help, but as he got closer, he realized they weren't deer and froze, petrified. The beings had oddly shaped heads and appeared to have patches of hair stitched over human skin. Both of the creatures looked in the direction of Elias and slowly stood up on their back legs and began running towards him, chasing him to the point where he was simply running and yelling in the direction of who knows what, no longer worried about waiting for his friend. He eventually ran into said friend and in a panic told him the entire story. And what do you know? The friend turned pale and explained that several years prior, he had had a similar experience while hunting in the forest outside of town, with his descriptions of the creatures being almost identical to what Elias had seen. Not to sound like a broken record, but I'm really glad I've never been like the nature hiking type. Cryptids are extremely elusive creatures, and when someone manages to get clear footage of one, I get excited. Clifford Lebrec claimed he'd been watching a creature for about 2.5 months on the outskirts of Des Moines, Iowa back in 1977, and over the years, there was only more and more sightings. So one night, Lebrec decided to fire at the creature. Allegedly, it was about 25 feet away from where he was parked in his pickup truck, and two creatures walked up from behind a hedge. One stopped, but the other went to a wood pile, bent down, and started to eat it with its back towards Lebrec. So he stayed in the car, waited for it to turn around, but it just kept on gnawing at the wood. So finally, he decided to fire at it from behind, and when the animals turned and saw him, he got crazy buck fever and just couldn't do it. So as it came towards him, he couldn't really get the window rolled up fast enough. It was apparently really close, and Lebrec was obviously petrified with fear as the creature advanced. Allegedly, it loomed over the car, and it was about 8 feet tall. It reached through the window, grabbed Lebrec, and shook the daylights out of him. Yeah, it was a very strong creature. He could feel its face about 6 inches away, and to quote him, he was in a state of tremendous fear. He could feel his whole body shaking. He felt a sensation of being twisted around and pushed onto the floor. The creature was angry, obviously, because you tried to fire at it, and then our witness passed out. When they regained consciousness, it was gone. Lebrec, who owned a truck brokerage firm, is also president of Bigfoot Research Incorporated. He's been researching Bigfoot reports for about 49 years, and the thing that attacked him was terrifying and enormous. He said that after the attack, his memory was kind of vague because of his terror, since the thing was shaking him around, so he decided to visit a hypnotherapist, Eric Elster of Knoxville, Iowa, who was the expert in our situation. Elster stated that he hypnotized Lebrec so that he would go back to the time of the attack, and Lebrec was able to design and construct a life-size model of the creature based on the details that came to him under hypnosis, as well as what he obviously consciously remembers. So he made a model of fiberglass that was covered in artificial hair that allegedly represented a typical young adult male. The model stands about 7 foot 6 inches, and if it were a real creature, would weigh like 600 to 1,000 pounds. And its feet, of course, are what gives the creature its name. They're about 18 inches long, 9 inches wide, and they leave a flat impression of the ground, like 2 inches deep. Allegedly, Bigfoot's fur is dark brown in color, and it has a very foul smell. So on this model, the shoulders measure about 4 feet across, the arms, which are about 47 inches long, reach down to almost the creature's knees, its biceps, 27 inches around this fun area, and the massive neck has a circumference of 40 inches. According to our witness, Bigfoot can make a wide variety of sounds. It can mimic other animals, but its typical voice is a low, guttural growl. But sometimes it can sound like a hooting owl or even a barking dog. Lebrec estimates that there may be as many as 5,000 Bigfoot creatures in the United States and more in Canada. And Lebrec believes that no remains are ever found of Bigfoots that have passed because they either bury or hide their dead. And during Lebrec's search for our elusive creature, he has investigated numerous reports of sightings. Allegedly, he searched for 15 years before finally meeting Bigfoot face to face. So this creature obviously exists, and it's thriving at great numbers and increasing all the time. Lebrec thinks that the Bigfoot is a very intelligent creature and tries very hard to avoid contact with humans. It's almost as if the beast has some form of primitive telepathy or instinct that warns it when a man is nearby. But despite the attack, Lebrec is still not afraid. He's like, I harvested what I sowed. It's like picking a fight and getting the heck knocked out of you. In November of 2009, Greg Warner and his team reported on and supplied photographs of a giant snake event near the jungle city of Iquitos in Peru. The photographs showed a trail at least 5 meters wide, and they also provided video evidence to support their photos and eyewitness accounts. So this creature is believed to be a yakumama, which is an enormous serpent believed to be the mother of all aquatic animals. According to legends, this creature would suck up any living thing that passed within 100 steps of it. So to protect themselves, local folks would blow on a conch horn before entering any body of water, believing that the creature would reveal itself if it was present. So the video we have for you today is in Spanish, but I managed to find a translation of what happens so we can dissect it. So in the human settlement 24 de Mayo, the dwellers got into a panic when they saw that on the enormous swamp located at the back part of the settlement, there was a huge silhouette of dragged grass and mud that was clearly visible, and they attributed the event to the creature. Although some folks were like, no, it's a gigantic boa, and it just guards a small pond. Well, one eyewitness claimed it started to move like this, circulate until it found a way out over there. And you cannot say there is a channel over there, as you can see it was plain. And this is the trail that it made. Look, it looked like it wanted to get out that way, but turned over there, it took all this way, it took all this. If you keep walking that way, you can see it remained like this. But before, it was not like that. Look, this is clearly further evidence that the black boa, yakumama, sakamama, and minhokao are one and the same in terms of cryptid classification. All regular description and photographic evidence points to this conclusion, but that doesn't make it any less scary for those of us who are terrified of snakes. An interesting video has emerged from Mexico that shows what appears to be a small bipedal humanoid scurrying across a road. So this video was reportedly captured in January of 2024 by a security camera at a farm in the city of Monterey and subsequently offered online back in May. A dark form exited from a wooded area on the side of the road, then quickly made its way across the dirt path, and then it vanished back into the brush. Simpson style. Many believe it to be sightings of duende, a humanoid figure of folklore that is comparable to goblins, dwarves, gnomes, or even leprechauns. So what do you think it is? Fun fact, in Spanish, duende originated as a contraction of the phrase dueña de casa, effectively master of the house. Or it could also be derived from some similar mythical being of the Visigoth or Swabian culture, given its similar looks with the tomte of the Swedish language, which is depicted as a mischievous spirit inhabiting a dwelling. Turns out, Spanish folklore is rich in tales and legends about various types of duendes. Anjanas, buscosos, dianos, enanos, elfos, hadas, gnomos, nubaros, and many others. On April 2nd of 2024, TikTok influencer Nightmare Fuel uploaded a strange 1-minute video they had received from an unnamed fan. And in the comments they wrote, a camera was set up facing the river in Namor after many people said they saw spirits in the river. And this is a river where many people have lost their lives over time. And the camera captured this, an unbelievable sight. And we have it for you. So some folks believe that they were referring to Lake Namor on Lolobau Island in Papua New Guinea. No date is given, though it's thought to have been fairly recent, and it's kind of unclear what exactly the creatures in the lake are, but they do appear to have large eyes that upon surfacing reflect the light. They swim about, submerge, emerge, and occasionally look at the camera. The activity seems fairly harmless, all things considered. YouTuber Maximum Fear featured the footage on his channel in a video titled Newest Disturbing Creatures Caught on Trail Cam 2024 and wrote, at some point, we can even see the eyes on the creatures reflected. They just slowly swim around with their long, straggly hair covering most of their face and head, and their pale white skin is slightly seen beneath. So a lot of folks are like, what could this be? Because once again, the river has a dark past, and folks think they might be paranormal manifestations of the lives lost, or they could actually be the creatures that are responsible for a lot of the disappearances and deaths. Maybe the land is cursed, maybe these are some sort of weird evil entity. No thanks. And finally for today, we have a video from August 2014 that was taken near Port Renfrew in British Columbia, Canada, and according to the witness transcript, it's something to see. Wendy and her husband were driving back from Port Renfrew, and there were a lot of creeks and streams flowing beside the road where they were driving, and Wendy suggested going for a little hike beside one of those streams. And while the duo were doing so, she's like, let's go further into the forest. She was feeling adventurous. So about 200 feet in, they spotted something ahead of them. And at first they were like, maybe it's a bear. But then they're like, no, it's a little more upright, kind of interesting looking, has a bit of a cone type head. So you watch the video, you decide. Allegedly there was kind of a musty smell in the air that wasn't strong, and the duo are adamant that this creature was not a bear. In 5th place today, we're kicking things off with the Matagami Bigfoot. For those of y'all who are unaware with the area, it's located roughly 6.5 hours north of Toronto, and it's a sweet little community. I personally grew up about 3 hours away from it, so I'm feeling pretty qualified to talk about the area today and provide some additional geographical context where needed. This tale actually begins around 20 years ago when our anonymous narrator purchased property on the lake, which is a very common cottage and vacation spot. He had grown up spending summers in the area and describes himself as very knowledgeable about wildlife noises. Around 9:15 at night, right about when darkness was starting to take over, our narrator and his wife were sitting by the fire, facing the vast woods on their property, when his wife decided to go inside for the evening. Probably to avoid mosquito bites, those are brutal up there. He was staring at the fire alone when he heard what he described as 3 whacks about a kilometer away, and didn't really think about it until around 15 minutes later when he heard the sound again, but closer. Originally he assumed it was the sound of a moose hitting their antlers against a tree, but it was too early in the year for that to be a thing. Being barely able to see the tree line through the darkness, our witness heard the noise again after another 15 minutes. But, you guessed it, closer. Not having anything to arm himself with and only a pen flashlight, he fled into the cottage as the whacks came again, and even closer this time. The whacks were never heard once he was inside the house that night, but happened often at night over the next decade. Now, I know, 2023. The most recent event was just last weekend when our witness was hosting a get-together to open the cottage for the season. It may seem early, but some northerners are really eager for cottage season, especially since they get such cold up there. All of his neighbors were present when they heard a bone-chilling scream from less than 100 yards from where they were standing, causing everyone to pause in shock and wonder what they were hearing. Soon after, the same type of scream was heard deeper in the forest, almost as if it were answering the first scream. After scouring the internet and listening to a wide variety of animal sounds, nothing matched what our witness heard. His property is water access only, which means the chances of, a random stranger pulling a prank or drunk debauchery are ruled out from possible logical reasoning. My last 2 cents on this point as a former northern girl, I've heard some weird stuff in the woods when I'd be, camping at a provincial park with my family as a kid, but nothing like that. Kinda glad now that I never really went exploring on my own. In 4th place, we have the most recent sighting of Nessie. For the uninitiated, Nessie is the preferred nickname of the Loch Ness Monster, located in Loch Ness, Scotland. Yeah, it might have been obvious to some, but I like to make sure we all know what I'm talking about. Spottings of our girl go all the way back to 565 AD, making her a grown woman at this point in time. Tied with Bigfoot for the most common cryptid being spotted, she's extremely popular, but quite the recluse at the same time. The most recent spotting is the first from this year, and I'm sure there will be plenty more to come. In early March, Nessie enthusiast Eoin O'Fedigan couldn't believe what he saw when he was monitoring a webcam video of the lake from his home. 2 separate clips captured something stirring in the mysterious depths close to shoreline lodges, near Fort Augustus on the loch's southern shore. He described that he almost couldn't believe what he was seeing, and it all happened so fast. In the first video clip, something moves on the surface for a couple of seconds, then you see 2 shadowy wakes moving in 2 lines under the surface, moving to the left around 15 feet before disappearing. Eoin estimated the wake was roughly 6 to 8 feet long, believing the water was too agitated for the disturbance to have been caused by a fish. Now, this is the first confirmed sighting of Nessie in over 7 months, breaking the drought of Nessie news. Maybe she was just hibernating? Can't say I blame her. Look at the weather some days. In 3rd place, time to talk about fairies. Now, while I like to think of them like helpful beings with multicolored hair and stunning wings, sadly the reality isn't all sugar plums and sweetness. American soldier Sam Barrett is a self-professed family man and comes from a long line of military personnel and is currently deployed on a peacekeeping mission. The location of his story has been changed for safety, so while I'm not quite sure where he's stationed for this, he describes the current climate as always raining or foggy. And at the time of this filming, yeah, ditto. One night this past February, while retrieving a cache of buried weapons, he and his platoon noticed some lights in the forest that were far away, but close enough to be seen with the naked eye. Sam described it as 10 small lights, all moving erratically. Another member of his group began to hear what sounded like 2 people whispering in a language none of the group could understand. It was very quiet at first, but then it started to gain in frequency until it sounded like they were whispering right next to his ear. Soon, 10 more voices joined in the whispering, but all speaking at the same time. The men began to panic, believing the lights to be a distraction, which was a common tactic used by local enemies, and that they would soon be ambushed. Caleb, a teammate and good friend of Sam's, suddenly started speaking very loudly. It seemed as though he was trying to communicate with his father, who had passed 2 years earlier, and dropped all of his belongings before running towards the lights. Sam assumed that his friend had lost it, or the enemy was playing with their minds. Fearing for Caleb, and worrying he might give up their position, Sam chased after him. Caleb just kept repeating, "I'm coming, father," as he sprinted towards the lights. And as they got closer, the lights got bigger, and Sam found it odd that he couldn't make out any definition in them. There was nobody or nothing behind them, nothing man-made or otherwise. They just looked like lights floating in midair. Caleb was now on his knees with his arms at his sides and directly in front of the lights. He seemed to be in some sort of a trance, and despite Sam's attempts to snap him out of it, he just kept talking to his father and directly to the lights. Eventually, the commander of the team arrived, observing Caleb and then the lights before muttering, "The fairies have him." Oh. Okay, not ominous at all. Caleb eventually passed out and the lights disappeared almost instantly. After being carried back to their base and returning to consciousness, Caleb had zero recollection of what had happened, not only that evening, but the entire day was a blank. Okay, so maybe I don't want to meet a real fairy anymore. In 2nd place, we have a spotting of not deer. Now, I have to say, I was definitely chuckling a bit at first reading about this cryptid friend, seeing as where I'm from, that's just another way to lead into conversation about seeing a moose on the highway. And while the thought of driving within eyesight of a moose is scary enough, not deer are actually scarier. This report comes from high school student Elias Merritt in Roanoke, Virginia. Describing the time of day as almost dark, he was waiting for his dad to pick him up after a basketball game when he experienced a feeling of something or someone watching him. He turned around suddenly and saw what he described as the shadow of a man behind a bush, which caused him to flee to the other side of the street, hiding in an area where he felt safer, but could still see if his ride was arriving. As he stood in this new position, Elias saw 2 deer along the edge of the woods and watched them as they moved, observing that one of the deer seemed to have a bad back leg or was injured. He walked in their direction to get a better look and see if he could help, but as he got closer, he realized they weren't deer and froze, petrified. The beings had oddly shaped heads and appeared to have patches of hair stitched over human skin. Both of the creatures looked into the direction of Elias and slowly stood up on their back legs and began running towards him, chasing him to the point where he was simply running and yelling in the direction of his home, no longer worried about waiting for his ride. Eventually coming across his dad, he jumped in the vehicle and was so panicked that all he could utter was, "Go, go, 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 go," unable to speak normally. Thankfully, his dad didn't prod, and the boy was able to tell his tale to both of his parents once he calmed down at home. Later that evening, Elias's dad sat down with him and explained that several years ago, he had had a similar experience while hunting in the forests outside of town, with his descriptions of the creatures being almost identical to what Elias had seen. Now, not to sound like a broken record, but I'm really glad I've never been the hiking type. Coming in first place, we have the Beast of Bladenboro, over in North Carolina, in the town of, anyone want to guess? You got it. There was a series of animal deaths back in the winter of 1953 to 54 that were highly suspicious, with plenty of skeptics discussing possible predatory animals as the cause, but locals claim it was the fault of a unique predator that still roams the forest to this day and can be spotted anywhere between Bladen Lake State Forest to the Green Swamp Preserve area, which is around 3 counties and 1,225 square miles, making it a fairly sized hunting ground. This spotting in particular takes place in early March, when experienced hunter Zach Kennedy was in the Green Swamp Preserve area when it started getting dark, which is when you have to leave the area in accordance with local law. Making his way through the swamp and bush towards his truck, he heard a strange noise and paused to listen closer, believing it to be a black bear. When he stopped, the unknown being stopped, and when he walked, it also walked. Now, Zach said it made him nervous, no kidding, because whatever it was knew he was there and wouldn't be running off. He said he started making noise and even set off a warning with his personal firearm. Now, unlike an actual bear would, this creature didn't leave, but instead let out a growl. Zach said you could feel as much as hear. A hard pass. When he came out of the woods and onto the dirt road where his pickup was within sight, Zach made the decision to try and run to his truck since whatever it was still following him. The creature soon began running as well, with Zach comparing the sound to a bulldozer crashing through the woods, and when it was out of the woods, it sounded like a horse running through loose dirt. He could hear the stomps of its feet and the growling in its breath, and released another round behind himself, hoping it would scare the being enough to stop for a moment and give Zach a chance to make it to the truck. The creature screamed behind him, and Zach thought the scream came from a human, causing him to turn around and clearly see the creature for the first time. He described it as jet black, as big as a 600-pound black bear, with a tail as long as its body and eyes that were glowing red. Zach bolted the rest of the way to the truck and jumped in, and had barely locked the door before the beast was pressed up against the window, with its breathing fogging up the glass. The creature then moved to the front of the truck, and while standing on all 4 legs, was eye level with Zach and his pickup. It chased Zach as he drove as quickly as he could for quite some time, before eventually stopping and staring as Zach continued his escape. Now, the next day, he and his dad went back and looked around for tracks, red bodily fluids, any evidence at all. He said there was no red fluid to be seen, even though he knows it was, shot, and there were paw prints as big as his hands on the ground everywhere. They then found a tree that had claw marks around an inch deep in the wood and spaced 4 inches apart from each other around 9 feet up. Now, the men didn't venture into the woods, nor did they go too far from the truck, describing the feeling of being hunted and not wanting a repeat of the day before or worse. They got back in the truck to leave and heard a scream that made all of the hair on their body stand straight, deciding then and there to leave and take a hiatus from hunting for this season. In 5th place, we have flying monkeys. Yep, you heard me right. While The Wizard of Oz might be one of my all-time favorite films, heck, I've even cosplayed Dorothy alongside my childhood Toto plush, it took me a while to wrap my head around this sighting. Darla of Jacksonville, Florida, experienced this event in May of 2017 that left her completely bewildered. She was driving on a neighborhood street and a strange animal was on the roadway. She could see its head and it looked kind of like a monkey, but it was smaller, similar in size to a prairie dog or a gopher. She found herself repeating, "What on earth is that?" to her friend that was in the car with her as she drove around it, seeing as it wasn't moving and was possibly dazed by the headlights on her vehicle. I'm hoping she didn't have her high beams on because they fry out my eyes, so I don't want to imagine what it would do to a little critter. Her friend thought it was like a possum at first, until they passed it and agreed that it definitely didn't resemble a possum, but they still couldn't come to a consensus on what it was. Darla turned the vehicle around, and all she could see were wings that seemed way too large for the size of what she had seen, flying away. Now, the logical part of her brain took over, and deemed whatever the heck it was too big to be an owl, so maybe it was snatched up in the sky by an owl? At this point, we've named off every similar creature in the same size range. Darla pulled over to mentally dissect what she had just seen to try and make sense of it. It was a being that was kinda on the smaller size, with a head, a neck, the ability to stand solidly on 2 legs, oh, and with extremely large wings. I was gonna say, that was almost my description. If anyone has any solid guesses, feel free to let me know in the comments. She knew that the nearby Walmart had monkeys living in the parking lot after independent owners let them escape, leaving her confused for eternity. All that comes to my brain after that description, for me personally, is the damn IKEA monkey, but wearing like a Wizard of Oz evil witch uniform instead of the oversized coat. I'm glad Darla managed to avoid any harm to herself or to her vehicle, but I know I'll be wondering exactly what the heck that creature would be for the rest of the night. Yeah, I got nothing. In 4th place, we had a manananggal from the Philippines. I swear I do look up how to pronounce new words, but my tongue just doesn't like them on occasion, and sometimes I get led astray by false pronunciation videos. 2 young women in Talisay City are positive that they spotted this creature. The name comes from the Tagalog word tanggal, which means to remove or to separate. Oh, for those of us who aren't experts on this creature, it's a being whose upper body separates from its lower body, possesses fangs and wings that give them a vampire-like appearance, and resides exclusively in the Philippines. This creature is said to favor preying on sleeping pregnant women, using an elongated proboscis-like tongue to suck the hearts of fetuses or the life source of someone who is sleeping. Now, as usual, local police are trying desperately to cover up this spotting, but thanks to social media, that's getting harder and harder for them to do. And we all know I hate a cover-up. Our 2 witnesses went to a neighbor's house to get a Wi-Fi connection, and afterwards, while they were returning to their own home, they spotted the manananggal on top of a roof of a neighbor's house. Now, the neighbor in question sadly didn't bear witness to the majestic creature, just both women shouting and crying. Police also interviewed another neighbor, whose house is close to this first neighbor's home, and he claimed to see the same thing. You know, the girls were shouting and crying, but nothing in the sky. Seeing as we have photographic evidence though, I'll let you lovely folks out there in the interwebs form your own opinions down in the comments. In 3rd place, we have a winged humanoid. I swear the entire list isn't going to be winged beings, I promise. Come on, don't you folks trust me by now? Look at this face. I don't think I've ever led y'all wrong. Chicago-based private investigator Manuel Navarrete was hanging out with his friends in a bakery parking lot on February 5th of this year, just chatting and vibing, as one does, when the group noticed something standing on top of the flea market across the parking lot. It looked like a pitch-black, 7-foot-tall man with wings that were wider than a car and red eyes that were as bright as taillights. The creature was observing Manuel and his buddies closely, making chirping noises that the group could hear clearly from the distance they were at, which was around 50 yards away even without the height difference. Now, the group continued their staring contest with the being for almost 10 minutes before it flew straight into the air and over the group of dudes, watching them the entire time. The men fought the temptation to run, not wanting to lead the creature anywhere or trigger like a prey response. They estimate the entire encounter happened between 11 to 11:30 p.m., and it was a rather clear evening, so there was no chance of clouds warping what they saw. I'll leave you folks with something fun to ponder over. This is the 8th confirmed sighting reported in that area since 2017, and no one is positive what the heck this creature is, just that it's out there. In 2nd place, we have a glimmer man in Chicago. See, I told y'all. No more winged whatevers. The only connection this encounter has to the last one is that they were both based out of Chicago, but in different areas of the city and took place within the last year. Other than that, no relation. Stella's experience took place on September 2nd of 2022, after a day of running errands for her elderly father, when she had returned to his apartment building and 6th floor residence. She went out on the balcony for a cigarette break, just standing and allowing her mind to go blank, when she noticed a weird large tree around 20 feet away. Yes, I'll obviously elaborate. One of the branches on the tree was bowing quite heavily, but Stella couldn't see anything on it that could be responsible for weighing it down. So as she was staring at the branch and trying to make sense of what her eyes were seeing, an intense feeling of dread and fear came over her, as if every part of her body was screaming at her to turn around and run, but she didn't know why. At this very moment, the bowing branch that she had just been observing began to shake violently, and despite her internal instincts still screaming at Stella, leave, curiosity had now gotten the better of her, and she started to move along the railing to get a closer look. As your friendly narrator, this is where I interject and tell anyone with some sense to, run! But hey, what do I know? It's not like I talk about this for a living. A small form began to glimmer on the branch, and as Stella continued to watch in shock, a transparent human figure that shimmered a yellowish-whitish color developed. Stella snapped out of her fixated stare and quickly took a step back from the railing, realizing finally that this is something that maybe should be feared. Glad the old common sense kicked in after the overwhelming fear, dread, and visual should have kicked in sooner in my opinion, but that's just my usual snark kicking in. The shimmery being eventually dropped out of the tree, landing behind a man who happened to be walking past at the time. Now the walking man spun around, his reaction similar to as if he had been hit with an object from behind, and was confused when all he saw was a cloud of smoke. Oh, by the way, the shimmery man had disappeared in the puff of smoke almost instantly after hitting the ground. Now Stella waited for some time, expecting to see this thing re-emerge from the dust or smoke, but it was completely gone. At the same time, another neighbor just a few floors below Stella and her dad had also observed exactly the same thing as her and managed to confirm all the same details. Now the neighbor and Stella then managed to track down the man who was walking past a few hours later, and after a conversation, confirmed that he had felt the weird impact, the overwhelming dread, but didn't see anything. Stella is positive that the Glimmerman still roams the area, often feeling the overwhelming emotions from the day whenever she visits her dad, but hasn't spotted it since. My heart goes out to her, and I hope whatever it is buggers off soon for her sake. In our first place, we have an aquatic cryptid in Vancouver. I swear ending today's video on a Canuck tale wasn't planned, but when it works, it works. Taylor Wallace is a private investigator based out of BC who was hired to find evidence of a person that's gone missing without a trace, only to find after a more than 6-year investigation evidence of large clawed creatures that could very well be eating people. The photos he has provided as proof show a large claw print in the sand that was found among others next to a headless seal that he discovered in 2016. So a large claw print cut into solid stone that was found in 2022, a cave made by something with large claws that has a red fluid-soaked entrance with a red claw print on the cave wall above it, and 3 separate scat samples from a large animal, believed to be one of these creatures, one of which contains very much what looks like a human fingernail. The area these were found in was a couple hundred feet around a lake from the public beach, and there were dozens and dozens of large claw marks coming out of the water and onto shore in various places that didn't belong to any kind of water creature that he could identify. Heck, after staring at them for quite a while myself, and with the knowledge I have of, beings at this point, the only thing in my brain that they look like are velociraptor claws. And I know that's not right. Not unless these photos came from Isla Nublar without telling anyone. Now Taylor has been returning regularly to the beach in question and has gathered multitudes of more evidence each time. He sadly found another decapitated seal and copious amounts of evidence of a large aquatic creature that's coming out of the ocean on a daily basis to feed on seals, ducks, and snow geese. Not only are there large digs and claw prints in the hard ground everywhere, made by a creature with, big claws, but the remains of dead animals are all over the park. Coyotes are the largest predators in the area, and he's never seen one in that park. But the claw prints are way too big to be coyotes or even just like a large dog. These digs are much bigger than even bears or cougars, and you don't even see those in the area. Okay, not gonna visit Vancouver anytime soon. I'll stick to the natural predators here in Toronto. Oh, and crappier evidence, in that nearby park, he's collected those 3 separate scat samples that I mentioned earlier, and he's hoping that that human fingernail that he found in one of them is from the missing human that he's been looking for years, so we can stop visiting this area and seeing all this weird stuff. Now, interestingly enough, where he's found evidence of these creatures, it matches up with the locations of people who have gone missing without a trace. Alrighty folks, check up on your BC friends and warn them to not go swimming alone anytime soon, or walk in any parks. Yikes.
Number 5. The Jersey Devil. Since the 19th century, New Jersey citizens have been putting up with a devilish cryptid whose name describes him to a T, the Jersey Devil. The Jersey Devil is described as a kangaroo-like creature with the head of a dog, face of a horse, bat-like wings, horns on its head, and a tail. The Jersey Devil has been terrorizing people for hundreds of years, and there have been a multitude of reported sightings which helped create the creature's reputation. While visiting a mill to inspect his cannonballs being forged, Stephen Decatur launched a cannon at a flying animal overhead. The animal hardly flinched and continued on flying. People often complained of the devil eating their livestock and leaving the animals in ghastly states. One man was actually able to demobilize the creature, thinking it dead, and took a picture. He showed it to dozens of people in the hope that someone would be able to identify the creature with red eyes, and many claimed that it resembled the Jersey Devil. In January of 1909, there was a drastic influx in published sightings. Newspapers wrote of the devil devil attacking trolley cars and social clubs. The authorities supposedly fired at the creature in an attempt to stop the attacks, but to no avail. Reports of footprints in the snow were coming in from all over the state. Many even offered thousands of dollars for the capture of the Jersey Devil, with the plans to make a private enclosure, or zoo, for the cryptid. Skeptics believe that the Jersey Devil is nothing more than a folk story, saying that the devil was created by the early settlers who were collectively suffering from mass hysteria. Many people have been found faking their claims of sighting the Jersey Devil, and even faking tracks or photographs in an effort to substantiate their claims. Whether the Jersey Devil is real or not, it has definitely become extremely well known and feared as a North American cryptid. Number 4, the skunk ape. The skunk ape is described as a large bipedal creature, standing at 5 to 7 feet tall and covered completely in reddish-brown hair. The skunk ape has been reported to live in swamps of Florida. Sightings of the cryptid began in the early to mid-1900s, with the first major sighting occurring when a group of people noticed a large, man-like creature in the Perky Bat Tower. The creature shook the tower, driving the bats away, and it escaped into the woods itself shortly after. In the 70s, 2 Florida deputies reported firing at the creature after it had stalked them through the woods. The deputies followed the uncanny tracks, finding reddish-brown hair that had been snagged in barbed wire. Many Everglades tour guides have reported sightings. In the summer of 1997, David Shealy noticed an animal trap filled with lima beans had large prints on the ground surrounding it. David Shealy soon set up other traps filled with the beans, and many people who explored the swamps reported similar sightings to his. In 2000, the county sheriff's office received a photo of a large, hairy, man-like creature. The person who had sent the photo claimed to be an elderly woman who had seen the creature stealing apples off her porch. She scared it off with her camera, fearing that the creature was an escaped orangutan that might harm her or her family. Sightings are still reported today. 48 out of 67 counties in Florida have made a report since 2010. Those in search for a rational explanation of the creature have accused the entire mystery surrounding the creature as a hoax, saying that the skunk ape is nothing more than a myth and a knockoff Bigfoot. Some say that sightings were just people mistaking other wild animals for it, like sick bears or wolves. Bigfoot's small, swampy cousin has definitely stirred up some serious drama in the South. Number 3, the Wendigo. The Wendigo is a humanoid creature, or spirit, originating from First Nations and Indigenous people from the southeastern forests of Canada and the Great Plains of the US. The Wendigo is said to be a malevolent spirit, appearing at times as a creature with human-ish characteristics, capable of possessing humans. The possession invokes feelings of insatiable hunger, greed, and even the desire to consume human flesh. The Wendigo has several descriptions. Depending on the region, it may differ slightly. The Wendigo has been said to have a heart of ice, a foul stench, and a sudden chill when the creature's presence is near. However, in the original indigenous depictions of the creature, these features were not mentioned. The Wendigo was introduced by Algonquin-speaking indigenous people, including the Ojibwe, the Saulteaux, the Cree, the Nespaki, and the Innu. In all of their descriptions, the Wendigo is consistently described as a malevolent, flesh-eating, supernatural being, strongly associated with winter, coldness, famine, starvation, and the north. Basil H. Johnson, an Ojibwe scholar, provided a description of the Wendigo. The Wendigo was gaunt to the point of emaciation, its desiccated skin pulled tightly over its bones, with its bones pushing out against its skin, its complexion the ash gray of death, and its eyes pushed back deep into their sockets. The Wendigo looked like a gaunt skeleton recently disinterred from the grave. What lips it had were tattered and unclean and suffering from separation of the flesh. The Wendigo gave off a strange and eerie odor of decay and decomposition, of death and corruption. The Wendigo has also been reported to cause psychosis in humans, usually resulting in the ending of their lives. When near to starvation, the Wendigo will possess a human, which leads the human to act in strange and scary ways. The human will slowly stop seeing those around them as peers, and instead, the possessed may view their peers as food. The lives of people who have been possessed are often ended to ensure that no one gets eaten. The Wendigo has also been viewed as a concept, opposed to a physical being, displaying the innate nature of greed, selfishness, and consumption that lays inside us all. In pop culture, the Wendigo has been depicted in many different ways, but all depictions were derived from Indigenous and First Nations people, which has in turn shone a lot of false and over-dramatized information over the Wendigo's origin. Number 2, the Yeti. Yeti, abominable snowman, snowy Bigfoot, all names for the ape-like, snow-dwelling creature that lives in the northern reaches of North America. The Yeti is described as a large bipedal creature with white, gray, or brown hair. It has also been depicted as having large, sharp teeth. The name abominable snowman was created in 1921 when Charles Howard Berry led a Mount Everest expedition. He wrote of seeing footprints in the snow. Describing them, he said, he believed they were probably caused by a large, loping gray wolf, which, in the soft snow, formed double tracks rather like those of a barefooted man. His Sherpa guides gave the creature the name of Meto Kongmi, which roughly translates to man-bear snowman. The name abominable came out of a mistake that interviewer Henry Newman made. In preparation for an interview with Charles Howard Berry, Newman assumed that the word Meto, man-bear, meant filthy, which he substituted abominable for. The name caught on quickly, and many called the creation of it a happy accident. Mentions and sightings of the Yeti extend back to before the 19th century. According to H. Seeger, the Yeti was part of many pre-Buddhist beliefs of Himalayan people. Seeger was told that Himalayan people used to view a glacier being as the god of the hunt. The Yeti has become an extremely popular creature. Filled with many mistakes and misunderstandings, the Yeti has a rich and slightly amusing history. Many movies have been made about Yetis, and people still travel to the northern reaches of the world in an attempt to capture proof of the Yeti's existence. Number 1. The Loveland Frog. And finally, I saved the absolute best for last, the Loveland Frogman. The Loveland Frog, or Loveland Frogman, finds its origin in Ohio. Standing on 2 feet at 4 feet tall, the frog is definitely much larger than the average amphibian. The Loveland Frog was first spotted in 1955. Some stories specifying that it was first spotted in May of 1955, when a businessman spotted the creature while driving on a dark road in Loveland, Ohio. Other stories say that a group of men spotted 2 or 3 creatures, each standing on 2 legs 3 to 4 feet tall, with frog-like faces and leathery skin. Honestly, that description just sounds like me and my friends waking up after a night out. The creatures were spotted over a poorly lit bridge, and one was extending its arm upwards and holding a sparkling light above its head. In March of 1972, in the dark of night, Officer Ray Shockey was shocked as he noticed a large animal scurrying in front of his car. Lit by the headlights, Shockey was able to note the large size of the animal. The creature then walked to the side of the road, stood up on its back legs, and climbed over the guardrail down towards the river. 2 weeks later, another officer, Mark Matthews, reported seeing a large crouching animal on the same road. Matthews secured the animal and brought it to Shockey, showing his coworker that the creature was merely an iguana. The Loveland Frogman has become a less known but very loved cryptid. Renderings of the creature definitely spark a little bit of joy into the viewer of them.
These real shapeshifter sightings caught on camera will shock you to your core. No one, not even the biggest enthusiast, can accurately explain what you're about to see. The Melting Man, a video that was captured and posted online, shows what appears to be a man, or at least an entity as they called it, walking through a metal gate. Could this be a genuine shapeshifter? Many believe so. As the video starts, what you see is a smaller looking entity approach the gate, and then its transparent body simply just walks through the gate, melting completely through. It's as if the gate was never even there. Now in the video you can actually hear the men talking in another language that's not English, but what they said is, "He never moved it, it didn't move," referencing the gate. Another man then says, "Oh, didn't it?" The first man then says, "The iron gate never moves, see?" And as the entity gets closer, it starts to take shape into something that looks distinctly human, but not quite. Now the 2 men watching were completely sure that they were witnessing a shape-shifting creature called an Aswang, and it may be on the hunt. A lot of people who watch the video do believe that it is a genuine shapeshifter, but some people called out that the footage was bad quality and therefore this just might be a hoax. The Pigman. This footage is as creepy as it is intriguing. There were fears and rumors circulating that a shapeshifter had entered the city. Now this hidden camera, situated above an alleyway, captured captivating proof of the Pigman, as locals were beginning to call him. This shapeshifter enters the frame appearing as some sort of hog or pig-looking creature, just something relatively small. But then just before entering the light, it shifts, rapidly changing and shifting into what looks like just a regular human man, though the small details always take an extra second to be shifted. Now, this footage has terrified the neighborhood it was recorded in, and no more footage of this pig man has been recorded, but maybe he has left the area or decided to be a little bit more careful where he chooses to shapeshift. Once this video was posted online, though, many people took to the comment section to discuss it. One person said it was likely a demon because demons can actually shapeshift into virtually anything and everything. They do make a good point, yeah. Now, of course, there was also a lot of other comments of people just saying it was a green screen and that it's a horribly edited video. Either way, it definitely caught many people's attention, and it's anyone's guess if this is real or not, but what do y'all think though? The shapeshifter in Mexico, a video that was posted online that's very brief but impactful no less, shows what appears to be a shapeshifter running towards something unknown. Now, the video apparently is taken in late 2023 in Nava, Mexico. It's not clear where this video came from, if someone filmed it with their camera or if it's like filmed from a home surveillance camera, but what we see is that it looks to be the backyard of maybe someone's home, and you can see two cars parked with no one else around, and it was very clear that what we are watching in this appears to be, in the nighttime. So if you watch closely, what you'll see is a small little figure running forward, but with, within a half a second that it's running, you can watch it get progressively bigger and bigger before reaching the height of a grown human. At least that's what it looks like to me. Now, many people have watched this particular clip over and over and over again trying to make sense of it, but just no one can. What are we watching? Well, many think it is in fact a shapeshifter that just happened to get caught on camera. What do you guys think though? The Aswang sighting in the Philippines. Now, footage that was taken in 2019 in the Philippines by two people stopped at what appears to be either a light or maybe an intersection. Honestly, it's not entirely clear, but the footage they captured is absolutely terrifying. This footage shows this couple allegedly capturing a shape-shifting entity known as an Aswang, which is a creature that's part vampire, part werewolf, part witch. That's quite the cocktail of demonic entities, isn't it? Now, in the footage, you see the entity on what looks to be a billboard of some sort, and it's moving extremely fast over it. Now, they move the camera to try and follow the creature and then actually zooming into it. Now, once they zoomed in, they were able to focus in on the creature and actually catch footage of it as it slowly and very creepily looked back at them, as you can hear the person filming take a really big gasp before quickly moving the camera and stopped filming. This one is scary, and no one has been able to truly explain it yet. The pale figure in Kentucky, USA. A 2022 security camera video from Moorhead, Kentucky showed a pale, lanky, hunched over figure moving cautiously near a home's backyard. Now, the eerie footage has sparked a lot of online debates, with some people suggesting it depicted a cryptid or supernatural entity, while others believe it was just a person in a costume. Now, this very mysterious pale creature looks to be crouching and trying to actually look for something. What though? Well, your guess is as good as mine. People took to the comment section though on a Facebook group, and one person said, "What you're looking at is a shapeshifter, clear as day, that's what it is." Another person argued that there's no way it was a human in a costume unless that human weighed about 50 pounds. One person offered another perspective and said, "This is an alien, and you can't convince me otherwise." Shapeshifter, alien, human, I'm confused, and so are so many others. What do you think though? The hurricane shapeshifter. In the middle of a very intense hurricane, where of course people are desperately trying to find a safe space or place to go and panicking, no less, it appears the shapeshifter was the calm within the storm, because in this video, an extremely eerie sight was captured on camera, and what we see is a flooded street with a street lamp shining directly down in the center of the water, when all of a sudden two very bright red eyes, or at least what resemble eyes, appear above the water and rise to an almost impossible height. The eyes then return to the water before a figure begins to kind of stir within the waves there. Then shockingly, a man stands from the water and walks backwards up. Now, shifters are known to be evil entities and predators and use their unnatural abilities to just modify their appearance in order to put us at ease. Yet shifters do not always get it right and often make minor mistakes with their presentation within the first few moments. Now here, we clearly see, the creature failed to recreate human movement, as for several seconds the creature walks backwards. However, it then seems to reassess itself and begins leaning forward in a very somewhat human fashion. Now, reported sightings like this one are not uncommon, especially in areas following flooding and storms. It seems the water maybe helps them in some way. Perhaps moisture is vital to them, and and flooded streets make for easy highways into residential areas. Two men were out cruising at night with a spotlight in search of deer but got spooked by something otherworldly instead. Now, the passenger with the light tells the driver to hold on, thinking he may have spotted a buck. The driver slows down and the passenger tells him to stop real quick, thinking he spots antlers just, poking out at the end range of the beam of light. All of a sudden, a distorted humanoid figure leaps up and waves its very elongated arms like menacingly. Now, the hunters believe it was a skinwalker or shapeshifter of Navajo legend, but some may believe it more resembles a rake from the urban legends of creepypasta. Now, rakes are described as human-like, but often with distorted limbs that are too thin and just too long, as well as glowing eyes and an inhuman mouth that seems wrong somehow. Now, these creepypasta urban legends are sometimes known to have fictional internet origins, but despite that result in real-life sightings of these supposedly invented creatures, some speculate this is from, folk tales of rural areas such as Appalachia, gaining internet access and transcribing the stories that had been passed down through many generations, leaving many to wonder, could there still be unexplained mysteries lurking deep in the heart of America? Well, that's all for today, but what do you guys think? Are shapeshifters real? Do they live among us? Have you ever seen one? Let me know your thoughts and opinions